Immortal Cultivation family. My comprehension ability can be stored dest video experiment para entretenimiento y no infringe derechos de autor en les. Los derechos de la novela y la imagen son del autor original. No reclamamos propiedad. No te gusta respirar y queers escuchar este fanfic completo ahora. Suscrebet en nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 101 Home Delivery. The auction lasted for nearly 10 hours before it was completely over. When Chen Daoxuan and Chen Daoxuan got the various inherited treasures they had auctioned and walked out of the main venue, it was already late at night. Due to the curfew policy of Guangdong Prefecture Xiancheng, the streets outside had long been silent. The two took the treading cloud beast cart and rushed back to the branch on West Street of Sanxiafang City. Chen Daoxuan was about to close a store door. A staggering figure rushed towards him and grabbed the door frame. Then, a shout rang from far and near. Go over there and look for it. Go over there. Hurry up. Seeing this, Chen Daoxuan grabbed the woman's hand and pulled her into the store. Then with a bang, he closed the door. Inside the store, Chen Daoxuan saw that Chen Daoxuan had brought back a woman in the time it took to close the door, and his expression was quite strange. But soon, the expression on Chen Daoxuan's face became serious. Because he had just seen this woman a few hours ago, and she was the living elixir book auctioned at the auction house. What was even more outrageous was that when he used his spiritual sense to scan the woman, it was as if he was scanning a ball of air, and he didn't notice her at all. The breath containment technique. Chen Daoxuan exclaimed in a low voice. The face of the female cultivator from Chuan country was pale, and it was obvious that she was seriously injured by forcibly breaking the Danshan confinement. At this moment, let alone taking action, even maintaining the breath containment technique almost consumed all her energy, and she looked shaky. Despite this, she looked at Chen Daoxuan's uncle and nephew with a vigilant look. Just as everyone in the room stared at each other, there was a knock on the door outside. Chen Daoxuan immediately pulled the woman aside, took out the invisibility talisman he had just bought from the auction house from his storage bag, and slapped it on the other person. The next moment, the woman actually concealed her figure little by little, and completely disappeared in front of Chen Daoxuan's uncle and nephew. Dong dong dong. Dong dong dong. Outside the house, the knocks on the door became more and more urgent. Who is it? Chen Daoxuan opened the door of the shop with an unhappy expression on his face. But when he saw the person in front of him, he immediately put on a surprised expression and said with a bow, "This senior, I wonder if you have any instructions?" Outside the house, an old man in the foundation building stage, with 3 young clansmen in the late stage of key training, stood in front of Chen Daoxuan. The old man had an upright figure and a resolute face. His eyebrows were like inverted steel needles, and he looked very difficult to deal with. "I'm a cultivator of the Wu family. An important person in the family has gone missing. I would like to ask if you have seen the person with strange behavior." The old man bowed and said coldly, "This." Chen Daoxuan's expression was quite strange, and he said cautiously, "Senior, are you making fun of me? Who has time to make fun of you? The one who ran away is the living pill recipe that my Wu family bought at Zhao's auction house. Your Chen family should have participated in this auction and know her value." The old man paused. This female cultivator from Chuan country is proficient in the art of concealing her breath, so she ran away without telling several of my clansmen. The old man of the Wu family explained simply. Fortunately, this is Guangdong Prefecture. If it were in other places, he, a foundation building cultivator, would not explain so much to a small key refining cultivator, and would just force his way in. Hearing this explanation, Chen Daoxuan and Chen Daoxuan looked at each other, opened the door of the shop, and made a gesture of invitation to the old man of the Wu family. "Thank you." The old man of the Wu family bowed and waved. The 3 Wu family disciples behind him filed in and poured into the magic weapon shop. The old man of the Wu family followed the 3 people slowly and walked in. Entering the shop, he glanced at the empty hall of the shop and found that there was no place to hide people, so he said to the 3 Wu family children, "Go to the 2nd floor." "Wait." Chen Daoxuan immediately stood up, blocked the 3 Wu family children, and bowed to the old man. Senior, the second floor is where my uncle and nephew rest and practice, and there will never be outsiders hiding. Senior, you are a bit too much. After saying that, staring at the old man of the Wu family. When the old man of the Wu family heard this, his face darkened. A mere key refining cultivator dared to talk to him like this. Get out of the way, the old man said with a gloomy face. Feeling the increasingly terrifying momentum of the other party, Chen Daoxuan's body couldn't help but tremble. Finally, under the pressure of the old man's momentum, Chen Daoxuan humiliated to give way. HMPH. The old man snorted lightly, completely unaware that the person he was looking for was standing less than 5 or 6 steps away from him. Half an incense stick later, after searching the residence of Chen's uncle and nephew, the 3 Wu family members went downstairs and shook their heads at the old man of the Wu family, indicating that no one was there. Seeing this, the old man of the Wu family bowed and said, "Sorry to bother you two fellow Taoists." After that, he left the shop without looking back, and rushed to the next shop. On the streets of West Street, there were many Wu family cultivators who were searching everywhere like this. It was not until the Zhao family's law enforcement team cultivators were finally alarmed that the Wu family had to stop, close the door of the shop. Chen Zion and his nephew breathed a sigh of relief at the same time, and then they became a little excited again. Living Danpu. It was a living Danpu whose Danshan was imprisoned and seriously injured. If I could learn about the alchemy inheritance from her. Thinking of this, Chen Zion's breathing became rapid. Chen Daoxuan frowned after being excited. The Wu family couldn't find this living Danpu, and at this moment, he was actually a little confused about who he was. The breath holding technique plus the invisibility technique are really difficult to deal with. Even the spiritual sense of a foundation building cultivator could not detect it, let alone him and Chen Ziyan, two key refining cultivators. After thinking for a while, Chen Daoxuan spoke to the air around him. The invisibility talisman can only last for 3 incense sticks at most, and it will take at least 3 hours to leave Guang'an Prefecture from here. In other words, you need at least 6 invisibility talismans to ensure your safe escape from Guang'an Prefecture. Hearing this, a figure appeared less than 5 steps in front of Chen Daoxuan. It was the female cultivator from Chuan country just now. Seeing that she had lifted the invisibility spell, Chen Daoxuan smiled slightly and thought to himself, there is a chance. After lifting the invisibility spell, the female cultivator from Chuan country stared at him intently and said in a hoarse voice, "Do you still have an invisibility talisman? Of course, it's enough for you to walk out of Guang'an Prefecture safely." Chen Daoxuan smiled. "What are the conditions?" Cough cough cough. The female cultivator from Chuan country said, coughing violently. "The alchemy inheritance in your mind and the secret technique of concealing breath you use." Chen Daoxuan not only coveted the alchemy inheritance of the female cultivator from Chuan country, but was also very tempted by the secret technique of concealing breath she possessed. Because after the verification just now, he had discovered the horror of the secret technique of concealing breath combined with the invisibility technique. As long as you don't make a sound, even the consciousness of the foundation building cultivator can't find it. It is indeed a magical skill for lurking and escaping. After thinking for a moment, the female cultivator from Chuan country nodded and said, "Okay. Happy cooperation." Chen Daoxuan took out a blank jade slip and threw it over. The female cultivator from Chuan country took the jade slip and was about to record it. Chen Daoxuan said, "Don't worry, you have 1 night to record it slowly. Guang'an Prefecture is under curfew. I will send you out of the city tomorrow morning." "Thank you." After a while, the female cultivator from Chuan country said coldly, "Just take what you need." Chen Daoxuan waved his hand. Chapter 102, Different Thoughts. The next day, after a night of breathing, when Chen Daoxuan saw the female cultivator from Chuan again, her face was still very pale, but it was much better than the shaky face last night. "Where is the jade slip?" Chen Daoxuan stretched out his hand. The female cultivator from Chuan raised the jade slip in her hand and said, "The alchemy inheritance and breath holding secret technique you want are all here. Where is the invisibility talisman?" Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan took out 6 invisibility talismans from his storage bag. Okay, when you send me out of the city and leave Guang'an Prefecture, this jade slip will be yours. Wait. Chen Daoxuan said calmly, how do I know if the things in your jade slip are real or fake? Hearing this, the female cultivator from Chuan hesitated for a moment and warned, don't play tricks. After that, she threw the jade slip in her hand over. Chen Daoxuan took the jade slip and examined it carefully. In the jade slip, there were a total of 7 first-level pill recipes and 3 second-level pill recipes as well as detailed methods of alchemy. However, Chen Daoxuan did not know the knowledge of alchemy and could not tell the truth for a while. So he came up with a plan and said angrily, how can your method of refining this elixir be wrong? How dare you fool me? Impossible. Who knows? The female cultivator of Chuan country heard this and immediately became anxious. The elixir recipe and alchemy method in the jade slip are all my years of actual experience in alchemy. There is no way you can cheat me. Seeing the faint smile on Chen Daoxuan's face, the female cultivator of Chuan country looked at Chen Daoxuan with resentment. The other party did not know alchemy at all and was purely cheating her. Sorry, I don't know alchemy, so I have to be careful. Chen Daoxuan bowed his hands. The female cultivator of Chuan country was full of anger, but thinking that she would have to ask the other party for help next. Despite her anger, she had to suppress her anger at this moment. Good boy, you wait for me, the female cultivator of Chuan country said in her heart. Before leaving, Chen Daoxuan glanced at Chen Zion and said, Uncle 13, please stay in the store. I will be back when I'm done. Hearing this, Chen Zion looked at him meaningfully and said, be careful. Don't worry. Chen Daoxuan nodded and gave a look that said I understand. 8 hours later, about 1,000 miles away from Guang'an Prefecture, on the Kanglan cargo ship, Chen Daoxuan bowed to the female cultivator of Chuan country and said, this ship is for the ferry. We will never see each other again. As he said that, he stretched out his hand to the other party. The female cultivator of Chuan country took out the jade slip that had been in her hand, walked to Chen Daoxuan, and whispered, thank you for the escort. Have a good journey. Just as Chen Daoxuan took the jade slip handed over by the female cultivator of Chuan country, the other party suddenly jumped up. A palm hit Chen Daoxuan's danshan. The thick true essence gushed out, releasing a terrifying pressure. But Chen Daoxuan could feel that her true essence was too weak compared to that of an ordinary foundation building cultivator. Was it the effect of her injury? Chen Daoxuan's mouth slightly widened. Just when the female cultivator from Chuan thought she had broken the other party's danshan qi with one palm, her palm was actually restrained by an extremely terrifying force. Idiot. How dare you play close combat with me? This sentence faintly came to her ears, and then a sharp pain came from her lower abdomen. An invisible shockwave swept across. The entire Kang'an was like a broken doll. The mast broke directly, and the sails fell down, and hit the deck of the Kang'an. The whole ship was shaking, as if it would fall apart, and sink in the next moment. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out of the mouth of the female cultivator from Chuan, and the injury, that had not yet healed, became even more serious. Physical cultivator. The female cultivator from Chuan felt a little annoyed. She was careless. She had never expected that Chen Daoxuan was not only a cultivator in the late stage of key refining, but also practiced physical training. In the world of immortal cultivation, there are very few cultivators who practice physical cultivation. Only a few elite children of large families or elite disciples of sects will choose to practice physical cultivation. It is not that physical cultivation is difficult to practice, but that the consumption of resources is too terrible, and the increase in actual combat power after practice is very limited. Therefore, few people now practice physical cultivation. But physical cultivation cultivators have an advantage that key cultivation cultivators cannot match. That is, they are strong in close combat. Even if a foundation building cultivator is caught off guard and is attacked by a physical cultivation cultivator with a weaker cultivation level, he may be seriously injured. The female cultivator of Chuan country at this moment is a typical example. She thought she would succeed in the sneak attack, but she didn't expect that Chen Daoxuan not only had a long-term defense, but also deliberately exposed a flaw to lure her into the trap. Thinking of this, The female cultivator of the foundation building stage was furious and spurted out another mouthful of blood. The first battle with the foundation building cultivator. Although he was a foundation building cultivator whose strength was wasted by 70% to 80%, Chen Daoxuan did not dare to be careless. He leaped up, and the deck exploded under his feet. His figure was as fast as lightning, and he chased after the female foundation building cultivator who was knocked away by his punch. How could this female foundation building cultivator dare to let him get close to her again? She immediately used the wind control technique and flew high into the sky. The female foundation building cultivator subconsciously reached for her storage bag, trying to take out the magic weapon, but found nothing. She then remembered that her storage bag had been confiscated by the Cunning sword sect. At this moment, she could only fight with her bare hands. Even for a foundation building cultivator, the combat power is completely different when holding a magic weapon or not. In addition, she was seriously injured at this moment. Facing Chen Daoxuan's violent attack, she was actually at a disadvantage for a while. Take advantage of her illness to kill her. Chen Daoxuan's wind-chasing and rain-covering sword was unleashed, covering the sea area of 100 feet in a rain curtain. The Chengiying sword broke through the air from time to time, forming white marks, slashing at the Xinyan shield held up by the female cultivator from Chuan country, and slashing the Xinyan shield with cracks. Although the cracks continued, but compared with the sword that killed the head of the Mo family, her Xinyan shield was still very solid, and it just didn't break. Obviously, although Chen Daoxuan's attack power far exceeded the upper limit of ordinary key refining cultivators, it was still a distance away from the foundation building cultivators. Die. Chen Daoxuan didn't care. The chasing wind and covering rain sword art was fully exerted, and the rain curtain became more and more rapid. The raindrops transformed by the sword energy slashed on the Xinyan shield with a rustling sound, combined with the uninterrupted slashing of the Chengiying sword. After an intense stick of time, the opponent's Xinyan shield finally failed a little, and it made a crackling sound. Seeing this scene, the eyes of the female cultivator from Chuan country showed a look of extreme horror. Although she was a cultivator in the early stage of foundation building, as an alchemist, she usually put all her energy into alchemy, and was not good at fighting. Apart from some necessary spells, she had never practiced other powerful spells. In addition, her magic tools were confiscated, and she became a tiger without claws and teeth. At the moment she was slaughtered. It was raining all night. Because of Chen Daoxuan's punch just now, the injury that had just been suppressed last night broke out again. The true essence of the female cultivator of Chuan country was in disorder. With insufficient true essence, the true essence shield she held up flickered. Seeing this, a ball of light flashed in Chen Daoxuan's eyes. He immediately seized this opportunity and slashed at the opponent's true essence shield with all his strength. Because the flying sword was too powerful, Beihen faintly distorted the rain curtain. Swish! A crack was directly cut in the true essence shield. Facing the horrified eyes of the female cultivator of Chuan country, Chengiying sword turned and beheaded her with one sword. Who? After killing the female foundation building cultivator from Chuan country, Chen Daoxuan began to breathe heavily. It seemed that this battle ended very quickly, and he was suppressing the opponent throughout the whole process. But Chen Daoxuan knew that it was not, that his real strength had reached the level of a foundation building cultivator. It was that the opponent was in too poor a state, and he was seriously injured by a punch in advance. In addition, the opponent had no magic tools or talismans in his hands. All these factors combined led to this cross-level killing. Otherwise, if it was a foundation building cultivator in good condition, Chen Daoxuan would not be able to win, and it would be good enough to escape with his life. In fact, if this foundation building female cultivator from Chuan country could hold on for a while longer, Chen Daoxuan's true energy would be insufficient, and he might have to choose to run away. Looking at the floating corpse on the sea, Chen Daoxuan ejected a spark. The spark touched the corpse of the female cultivator from Chuan country and suddenly exploded, covering her entire body. After a while, under the burning flames, the body of the female cultivator from Chuan country turned into ashes and disappeared on the sea. Looking at the jade slip in his hand, Chen Daoxuan showed a touch of excitement on his face. The inheritance of alchemy. Finally got it. Just when he was happy, suddenly, he saw a white figure standing quietly on the sea not far from the Kanglang. Seeing this white figure, Chen Daoxuan felt a chill rushing to his head, and his heart beat like thunder. Take a deep breath. Chen Daoxuan adjusted his mood, and flew towards the other party. Approaching, he lowered the flying sword in his hand and said respectfully, Junior Chen Daoxuan, pays homage to Senior Zhao. On the sea, Zhao Mubei, dressed in white, looked at Chen Daoxuan, who stood in front of him with his hands clasped, and said silently, Chapter 103 Feedback. After a long time, when Chen Daoxuan was sweating, Zhao Mubei nodded and said, good swordsmanship. Hearing this praise, Chen Daoxuan felt relieved. Thank you for the compliment, Senior. Zhao Mubei shook his head. Good swordsmanship is good swordsmanship. If you are less than 20 years old and have only stepped halfway into the threshold of sword intent, it is not considered good swordsmanship. Then it will make the sword cultivators in the world ashamed. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan didn't know how to refute, so he lowered his head and said nothing. Seeing that Chen Daoxuan didn't speak, Zhao Mubei smiled and said, my friend, I wonder what you think of Guangan Immortal Alliance? He hesitated for a moment. Chen Daoxuan bowed and said, Senior, do you want to hear the truth or a lie? What about the truth? What about a lie? It's a lie. The Guangan Immortal Alliance is vulnerable and can't be compared with Guangan Prefecture at all. Zhao Mubei's eyes lit up slightly. Oh, you mean, the Guangan Immortal Alliance will pose a great threat to my Guangan Prefecture? Indeed. Chen Daoxuan nodded. Although the Guangan Immortal Alliance is far inferior to the Zhao family in strength, it has united most of the immortal families in Guangan Prefecture after all, and it has no shortage of financial resources. And the policy they have adopted is to vigorously support independent cultivators and use independent cultivators to drive the development of the Immortal Alliance. In this way, a large amount of independent cultivator popularity in Guangan Prefecture will definitely be taken away. Zhao Mubei shook his head and said, Guangan Prefecture does not rely on the independent cultivator market. What supports it is the core business district. You can't say that. Chen Daoxuan paused. Junior dares to ask, which groups support the core business district? Hearing this, Zhao Mubei remained silent. The group supporting the core business district is precisely the foundation building families that jointly established the Guangan Immortal Alliance and the largest number of key refining families. The Guangan Immortal Alliance played this trick and simply drained the old foundation of Guangan Prefecture. Of course, not all families have joined the Guangan Immortal Alliance, such as the Chen family of Shuanghu Island in front of us. However, as long as 1/10 of the families join the Guangan Immortal Alliance, the loss to Guangan Prefecture will be immeasurable. What's more, those neutral families that have not joined the Guangan Immortal Alliance will definitely move part of their own industries to the newly built Lingzhou city in the future. For example, the Chen family of Shuanghu Island promised that Patriarch Yang would go to Lingzhou city to open a magic tool shop. In this way, the impact on Guangan Prefecture will be great. I admit that Guangan Zion Meng's move has had a huge impact on Guangan Prefecture, but I still think they can't beat our Zhao family because they are not strong enough. Why should they beat the Zhao family? The Yang family, Wu family, and Zhao family that formed Guangan Zion Meng didn't have much benefit in Guangan Prefecture. Now every bit of benefit they grab from Guangan Prefecture is a victory. Zhao Mubei breathed a sigh of relief after hearing this. Your vision surprises me more than your kendo talent. If it were you, how would you solve this problem? If it were me, I would follow the policy of Guangan Zion Meng. Chen Daoxuan said decisively. What do you mean? Zhao Mubei looked at him with interest. Chen Daoxuan held his breath and concentrated, explaining, according to the current external propaganda of Guangan Immortal Alliance, they will build hundreds of spirit veins of various grades within a radius of 10,000 miles of the newly built Lingzhou city for the use of independent cultivators to practice. The prerequisite is that independent cultivators must open up spirit fields and plant spiritual medicines in the spirit veins. In the long run, this policy of Guangan Immortal Alliance will definitely bring them huge benefits. With spirit veins, independent cultivators can practice and supply the various resources they grow to Lingzhou city. and Lingzhou City can collect taxes from transactions between independent cultivators and family cultivators. In this way, a perfect cycle can be formed. Chen Daoxuan paused, but this approach has a natural disadvantage. Oh. What disadvantage? Zhao Mubei's eyes lit up. After Chen Daoxuan's narration, he also felt that the Yang family's move was very clever. Apart from using force to oppress, the Zhao family seemed to be unable to find any good way out. In the Wangxinghe, when it comes to the level of the Zifu family such as the Zhao family and the Yang family, if they want to use force directly, the Carnioan sword sect will not sit idly by. This is also the most helpless part of the Zhao family. The Zhao family's fist is big, but not as big as the Carnioan sword sect. That is because the Guangan Immortal Alliance does not have enough spirit stones. Not enough spirit stones? Zhao Mubei frowned and looked at Chen Daoxuan in confusion. Seeing his confused look, Chen Daoxuan explained, the Guangan Immortal Alliance artificially cultivates spirit veins, builds Lingzhou City, and lends spirit stones to casual cultivators to open up spirit fields and plant spiritual medicines. In the short term, a large amount of spirit stones will be consumed, and even more than 90% of the Guangan Immortal Alliance's reserve spirit stones will be consumed. At that time, what should these casual cultivators and family children use to trade with each other? Hearing this, Zhao Mubei couldn't help but suddenly realized. This principle is simply deflation. Spirit stones are very different from secular money. Although it is a basic currency of the immortal world, it is also a resource that can be consumed. Once the consumption of spiritual stones is too large, it will have an impact on transactions, thus causing deflation. At this time, if the Zhao family brings a large number of spiritual stones into Lingzhou City for a shopping spree, they will buy a large number of goods at a very low price, thus causing a heavy blow to the economy of Lingzhou City. By then, the casual cultivators will find that the various resources they have worked hard to cultivate for a year or several years have depreciated several times or even dozens of times the spiritual stones. When they spend money again, they will find that the prices have returned to the original level or even higher, and a large amount of wealth has been harvested invisibly. After discovering this scene, the casual cultivators will definitely not be happy, and the Zhao family will supplement it with the same policy as Lingzhou City. What choices will the casual cultivators make at that time can be imagined with their feet. Hearing Chen Daoxuan's detailed explanation, Zhao Mubei's eyes became brighter and brighter, and his eyes looking at Chen Daoxuan revealed more and more appreciation. Daoxuan, do you mind if I call you that? Zhao Mubei said with a pleasant face. Senior Zhao, please feel free to do as you please. Chen Daoxuan bowed. Zhao Mubei smiled and said, I wonder how old you are this year, Zuan? To reply to Senior Zhao, I'm 18 this year. Are you married? Chen Daoxuan suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart, and hesitantly said, I'm devoted to cultivation, and have no intention of getting married. Hearing this, Zhao Mubei looked at him deeply and said, what do you think of my Zhao family? Good. Chen Daoxuan said the word good, and then he may have felt that something was wrong, and added, very good. You don't have to comfort me. I know that in your eyes, my Zhao family is overbearing in Guanghan Prefecture, and the major families have long had complaints in their hearts. Otherwise, they would not have formed the Guanghan Immortal Alliance to fight against us. Zhao Mubei paused. Your plan is very good, but I don't plan to adopt it. Do you know why? To reply to Senior Zhao, I don't know. Because no matter what, we are all Kangzhou cultivators. Even if we go to the battlefield in the future, we are comrades in arms in the same city. Zenon Pass has been lost, and Carnioan Sword Sect will definitely recover it in the future. You said, we are so aggressive to our comrades in arms, how can we fight the enemy together in the future on the battlefield? This is short-sighted. Zhao Mubei shook his head. No matter how we Guanghan Prefecture cultivators fight internally, there must be a limit. If you exceed this limit, not to mention that Carnioan Sword Sect will not tolerate you, my Zhao family will not tolerate you. Just like you just killed the female cultivator from Chuan country, if your previous choice was to secretly let her go, no matter how excellent your swordsmanship talent is, I will definitely kill you with one sword. Remember, in Wangxinghe, collaborating with the enemy is a capital crime. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan lowered his head. He knew that the person in front of him must have followed all the way. Maybe Zhao Mubei knew that this Chuan woman was hiding in their Chen family magic weapon shop last night. When Chen Daoxuan raised his head again, there was no one in front of him. Zhao Mubei had disappeared long ago, leaving only a jade slip floating in front of him. This is a bit of my experience in comprehending the sword intent back then, and I'm giving it to you. Thank you, Senior Zhao. Chen Daoxuan bowed. Chapter 104, Enlightenment of Sword Dao. When Chen Daoxuan flew back to the deck of the Kanglong, he not only found that the mast of the Kanglong was broken, but also that its deck was completely cracked. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, he found that the entire cargo ship was on the verge of collapse. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxuan had to sigh at the strength of the cultivator. This was just the shock wave of his full strength punch, plus a step on the ground, which caused such a tragic situation. If he attacked the Kangan directly, he would probably be able to sink it with one sword. Looking at the broken appearance of the Kanglong, Chen Daoxuan knew that it was no longer realistic to rely on it to return to Guanghan Prefecture. Helplessly, Chen Daoxuan used the wind control technique, identified it, and flew towards Guanghan Prefecture. When Chen Daoxuan flew over 1,000 miles to the port of Guanghan Prefecture, his face was as pale as paper. Originally, he had consumed most of his true energy in the battle with the female cultivator of Izumo country, and after flying over 1,000 miles, the true energy in the Danshan Kisi was almost exhausted. Fortunately, he finally arrived at Guanghan Prefecture before his true energy was exhausted. Otherwise, he would have swam back from the sea. Sangxiu Fangshi. Return to the West Street branch. Chen Zion stepped forward quickly, took a look at Chen Daoxuan, and was relieved immediately. He knew what Chen Daoxuan was going to do today, but he did not stop him. First, the inheritance of alchemy is extremely precious. Just like when the Chen family obtained the second level refining inheritance, it was all obtained by accumulating military merits after the immortal generation of cultivators survived several times. Second, he believed in Chen Daoxuan's strength. In fact, Chen Zion was probably the person who knew Chen Daoxuan's strength best. Because of his growth, Chen Zion saw it all bit by bit, including the fact that Chen Daoxuan didn't even know a sword formula 2 years ago, and now he has half a foot in the threshold of sword intent. Chen Zion simply couldn't describe the progress in words. This secret, except Chen Zion, no one knows. Outsiders knew that Chen Daoxuan had an amazing talent for swordsmanship, but they all thought that he had learned swordsmanship since he was a child, which was why he had achieved such amazing achievements. No one knew that it took Chen Daoxuan less than 2 years to reach his current level. If this matter were to be revealed, Chen Daoxuan would either be noticed by a high-level cultivator and accepted as a disciple. Another possibility was that he would be destroyed by a jealous cultivator. After all, Chen Zian, who had experienced many things in the world, knew the darkness of human hearts very well. Patting Chen Daoxuan on the shoulder, Chen Zian signaled him not to speak and to go back and rest. Chen Daoxuan smiled on his pale face and nodded. The next day, Chen Daoxuan, whose true energy had been completely restored, said goodbye to Chen Zian. He drove the family's Kangan and headed towards Shuanghu Island. This time, the Chen family had gained too much, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that it was a bumper harvest. Not to mention the harvest of various treasures. Let's talk about the most important inheritance for the Xiuxin family. This time, Chen Daoxuan obtained a first level inheritance of his own spiritual armor, a first level inheritance of making talismans, a second level inheritance of refining equipment, and 11 spells of various attacks, defenses, and escape techniques from the auction house, 1 fire attribute foundation building period technique Qiangong, 1 first level sword technique Zhengjin sword technique, and the most precious second level alchemy inheritance. Of course, he did not buy the second level alchemy inheritance from the auction house, but it was an unexpected gain, which was considered a leak from the Wu family. In fact, it was not a leak, because even if the Wu family bought this female cultivator from Chuan country, they might not be able to get this alchemy inheritance. The reason why this female cultivator from Chuan country was so straightforward to reveal the alchemy inheritance was entirely because Chen Daoxuan was only at the key refining stage. She felt that she was fully capable of controlling the overall situation. Who knew that she would encounter a pervert like Chen Daoxuan who could not be judged by common sense? The result was tragic. The car overturned in the gutter. A month later, Chen Daoxuan finally returned to Xuanghu Island after several months away with a fleet of goods. Back to Xuanghu Island. Breathing the fresh air on the island, Chen Daoxuan relaxed. It feels so good to be home. After getting off the boat and standing at the dock, Chen Daoxuan sighed secretly as he watched the tribesmen carrying goods back and forth. After watching the busy tribesmen on the dock for a while, Chen Daoxuan used the wind control technique and flew towards his spiritual house. He gained too much from Guang'an Prefecture this time. Not only tangible gains, but also intangible gains. For the Chen family, the biggest intangible gain of this trip is the attitude of the Zhao family. As the largest family in Guang'an Prefecture, the attitude of the Zhao family undoubtedly determines the internal environment of Guang'an Prefecture. If the Zhao family decides to confront Guang'an Xianmeng as a part of Guang'an Prefecture, it is difficult for the Xuanghu Island Chen family to stay out of it. This is undoubtedly extremely detrimental to the development of the family. But after meeting Zhao Mubei, the prodigy of the Zhao family, Chen Daoxuan clearly felt that Zhao Mubei did not seem to be too hostile to Guang'an Xianmeng. You know, as the only heir to the patriarch of the Zhao family, Zhao Mubei's attitude almost means the future attitude of the Zhao family towards Guang'an Xianmeng. The Zhao family has no intention of being an enemy of Guang'an Xianmeng. This is good news for other neutral small families, and for all the families of Guang'an Xianmeng. In fact, although Guang'an Xianmeng is so powerful, which family in it is not afraid of the Zhao family? It's just that everyone is forcibly united for the sake of profit. If they really go against the Zhao family, I guess no one has the courage. He returned to the Lingfu with a familiar way. Looking at the spiritual pond overflowing with spiritual energy in the courtyard, Chen Daoxuan sat cross-legged on a cushion, made of warm jade in front of the spiritual pond. After thinking about it, he took out a jade slip from his storage bag. This jade slip is not the inheritance or practice he got from the auction, nor is it the second level alchemy inheritance. It is an experience about comprehending the sword meaning that Zhao Mubei gave him before leaving. In fact, Chen Daoxuan's swordsmanship has not improved for more than half a year. In other words, he was stuck at the threshold of sword intent like Yang Gangwen. The only difference between the two was that Yang Gangwen was not good at understanding, while Chen Daoxuan was not good at family foundation. Chen Daoxuan's current strength was definitely the ceiling among all the cultivators of the Chen family in Xuanghu Island. It was undoubtedly a pipe dream to find useful cultivation experience from the family library. As for the experience in the realm of swordsmanship, no one in the Chen family of Xuanghu Island could cultivate the first order sword tactics to the perfect realm except Chen Daoxuan. Not to mention that he was only one step away from understanding the sword intent. Therefore, Chen Daoxuan attached great importance to the jade slip that Zhao Mubei left for him. After all, the experience and understanding of swordsmanship by sword cultivators was a precious treasure that was difficult to measure with spirit stones. Chen Daoxuan received this great favor, and he must repay it in the future. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan put aside his distracting thoughts and immersed himself in the experience and understanding of the jade slip. Chapter 105 Sword Intention and Sword Cultivation. Zhao Mubei said that the jade slip he left for him was a little experience and insight. But when Chen Daoxuan looked at it carefully, he found that Zhao Mubei's analysis of the sword was quite detailed, and it was not an exaggeration to say that it was a sword inheritance. The opening content of this jade slip introduced the history of the sword in Wangxinghe. In fact, 1,000 years ago, the Cunning sword sect had not yet risen to rule the Wangxinghe period. The magic tools used by the monks in Wangxinghe were varied. Some used spirit rulers, some used seals, some used whips, and even hammer magic tools. There were many types of magic tools. But now the magic tools used by the monks in Wangxinghe are highly unified, and more than 90% of the attack magic tools are flying swords. It is better to say that they were beaten by the Cunning sword sect back then than to say that they were influenced by the Cunning sword sect. Learning from the strong is human instinct, and monks are no exception. After countless battles when the Cunning sword sect ruled Wangxinghe, The monks in Wangxing thoroughly understood the horror of sword cultivators. The number one in attack of sword cultivators of the same level was called out from that period. And the Kainian sword sect. There is a strict standard for dividing the realm of swordsmanship. This standard is sword intent. In short, those who comprehend sword intent are sword cultivators. Conversely, they are not. However, for cultivators who comprehend sword intent, comprehending sword intent in the foundation building stage, and comprehending sword intent in the purple mansion stage are naturally different. This is related to the issue of sword intent tempering the true essence and magic power. Why are sword cultivators called the best in the same level? It depends on the true essence and magic power that are more powerful than those of the same level cultivators, after being tempered by sword intent. If you have to make an analogy, it is a bit like the addition of attribute skills to the power of true essence after a cultivator reaches the foundation building stage. But there is a big difference. Because the true essence and magic power, after being tempered by sword intent, can also practice attribute skills. This means that the true essence and magic power of sword cultivators are always one level stronger than those of cultivators of the same level. The basic true essence and magic power are stronger, so sword cultivators naturally stand at a height that cultivators of the same level look up to, not to mention that sword cultivators have unparalleled swordsmanship. The power of various sword techniques is amazing. This is also the reason why Zhao Mubei, with only the first level of Purple Mansion, seriously injured the leader of the late Purple Mansion of the Mermaids. If it were an ordinary cultivator, a first level Purple Mansion cultivator would be lucky to survive in the hands of the opponent, not to mention the opponent of the late Purple Mansion cultivator. The later the cultivator cultivates, the greater the gap between the early and late stages. For example, Chen Daoxuan was able to take advantage of the time and place to kill a cultivator in the early stage of foundation building and the late stage of key refining. But few cultivators can kill a Purple Mansion cultivator across levels in the foundation building stage. Not to mention the cross-realm killing in the later stage. It is almost impossible to do. Even killing an enemy across a small realm is extremely difficult. Generally, being able to remain undefeated across a small realm means that your actual combat ability is far superior to that of cultivators with the same cultivation level. This shows how terrifying Zhao Mubei's record was. If the leader of the mermaids ran slower, or Zhao Mubei insisted on chasing him despite his own injuries, Luoli's father would probably be in trouble. In the courtyard, Chen Daoxuan, who was sitting cross-legged on the warm jade mat, then looked down. The tempering of sword intent usually starts from the foundation building stage. The true essence is tempered into sword essence. Sword essence is actually a special name for sword cultivators, to temper the true essence of sword intent. Zhao Mubei also mentioned it in the Jade Slip. According to legend, if there is a cultivator with extraordinary comprehension and sword talent, and can comprehend the sword intent in the key refining stage, then he can have one more tempering opportunity than other sword cultivators. However, even if there is such a cultivator with such an extraordinary talent, Zhao Mubei does not recommend that the other party do so. Because the biggest difficulty for key refining cultivators to build a foundation is to expand the sea of key. In order to expand the sea of key, key refining cultivators must ensure that their true key is extremely peaceful. Even practicing attribute skills will reduce the success rate of foundation building, not to mention the true key after tempering. The cultivator takes the foundation building pill to make the transformed true essence less violent. If there is a cultivator in the key refining stage who is gifted and uses sword intent to refine his true key during the key refining stage, when his special true key transforms into true essence, its violent degree is almost no less than the true essence after the foundation building sword cultivator refines it. How can the key sea and the danshan of a cultivator in the key refining stage withstand such pressure? The only outcome is that before the violent true key completely transforms into true essence, the key sea and the danshan will be directly burst. Expanding the key sea will become a joke. In the Jade Slip, Zhao Mubei only slightly lamented the existence of such a sword cultivator. After all, Zhao Mubei himself is also a sword cultivator. If he says that he has no aspirations for the ultimate that a sword cultivator can theoretically achieve, he must be lying. Not to mention Zhao Mubei, when Chen Daoxuan saw his introduction, he couldn't help but have longing for this kind of sword cultivator. In the past 2 years, Chen Daoxuan has spent the most time on enlightenment in the sword path. It can be said that he has made it clear that he will embark on the path of sword cultivation in the future. At least the path of sword cultivation will be his main path in the future. As for other branch paths, they can only be regarded as the product of his leisure and elegance. In addition, he is now half a foot on the threshold of comprehending the sword intent. He is only one step away from comprehending the sword intent. It is entirely possible for him to do what Zhao Mubei said, comprehending the sword intent in the key refining stage. However, if you want to become this legendary sword cultivator, comprehending the sword intent in the key refining stage is only the most basic one. The subsequent foundation building is the biggest difficulty. Of course, the difficulty of foundation building is great, and the benefits obtained after foundation building are also great. Once this kind of cultivator successfully builds the foundation, it means that he can use the sword intent to temper his true key and true essence once in the key refining stage in the foundation building stage. The foundation is more solid than that of other sword cultivators. No one of the same level cultivators can match him in true essence and manner. You know, the pursuit of strength by cultivators is not just about being brave and fierce. It has practical significance. This practical significance is reflected when the cultivator breaks through the golden core stage. Why is it said that Zhao Mubei has a better chance of breaking through the Jianden stage than Zhao Laozu, the perfect cultivator of the Purple Mansion? The reason lies in strength. Jianden cultivators are different from the previous cultivators of various levels. When a cultivator breaks through to the Jianden stage, he will face the first heavenly tribulation in his cultivation career, also known as the Jianden tribulation. At this time, if the cultivation method that the cultivator practices is the kind of cultivation method that is easy to practice and easy to break through in the early stage, then the chance of passing through the Jianden tribulation will be very small. The more comfortable it is in the early stage, the more miserable it will be when breaking through the Jianden. This is also the reason why the cultivators are truly recognized as high-level cultivators by the cultivation world after reaching the Jianden stage. Because only Jianden cultivators have truly faced the power of heaven and know the horror of the power of heaven. After passing the tribulation, the state of mind of Jianden cultivators is often very different from before. And because of their strong strength, sword cultivators are the best at the same level. They have a much greater chance of passing through the Jianden tribulation. As long as the sword cultivators do not commit suicide, they can basically survive the Jianden tribulation safely. Chapter 106 The Concept of Danshan Pressure Reducing Device. After about a day and a night, Chen Daoxuan finally finished reading the contents of the jade slip. Except for some miscellaneous notes in the front, most of the contents of this jade slip recorded Zhao Mubei's various insights into the sword intent. And this kind of insight was exactly what Chen Daoxuan urgently needed. Just after reading the insights in this jade slip, he actually had some ideas about how to comprehend the sword intent. The bottleneck of swordsmanship that had been stuck for more than half a year also began to loosen up. Zhao Mubei's understanding of the sword intent can be summed up in 4 words: integrating the way into the sword. For example, Chen Daoxuan's major chasing wind and covering rain sword art and rock sword art are obviously wind, water attribute sword art and earth attribute sword art. If Chen Daoxuan wants to comprehend the sword intent, he must have some understanding of the way of wind, water, and earth, and finally integrate the way into the sword to truly comprehend the sword intent. So, it seems that half a foot has stepped into the threshold of the sword intent, but in fact, there is still a world of difference between it and truly comprehending the sword intent. Once this step is taken, it will be a completely different world. This is also the reason why sword cultivators look down on cultivators of the same level. When Chen Daoxuan saw this, the big stone in his heart was put down. If he couldn't get in before, because he couldn't find the direction, no matter how great his comprehension was, he couldn't learn without a teacher and create his own path, right? At least Chen Daoxuan, who was in the key refining stage, couldn't do this. Now, with the specific direction provided by Zhao Mubei, the next problem is easy to solve. I want to comprehend the way of wind, water, and earth. Is there a better way than practicing magic of each attribute? The magic of wind, water, and earth attributes originally contains the magic patterns of each attribute. The deeper the comprehension of magic, the deeper the comprehension of the Tao. This method is also mentioned in detail in the Jade Slip, left by Zhao Mubei. As for how to integrate the way of wind, water, and earth into the way of swordsmanship after comprehending it, Zhao Mubei only used the phrase "it can only be understood, but difficult to express in words" to describe it. Chen Daoxuan didn't mind it. Anyway, the general direction has been found, so are the remaining problems still problems? As for the spells of wind, water, and earth, Chen Daoxuan happened to buy them at Zhao's auction house this time. No need to make another trip to Guang'an Prefecture to buy. After solving the problem of comprehending the sword meaning, Chen Daoxuan felt like a big stone was put down in his heart. But then, he began to consider the problem of building a foundation, after comprehending the sword meaning. Compared with comprehending the sword meaning and the key refining period, how to build a foundation, after comprehending the sword meaning, and tempering the true key is a more troubling problem for him. That's right. Chen Daoxuan plans to impact the legendary sword cultivator, and he feels that he is not completely unsure. But in this way, the time for his foundation building may need to be postponed for a few years. But he doesn't care. Building a foundation is to build the foundation of the immortal way. It's like building a house. If the foundation is not solid, how can the house be built high and stable? The same is true for cultivation. If the foundation is not stable, the future achievements are destined to be limited. But for most casual cultivators, building a foundation is already his lifelong wish. As for high realms, it is not something that ordinary casual cultivators can aspire to achieve. But Chen Daoxuan is different. He has a golden finger like the Hongmeng Enlightenment Sutra and the endless resources provided by the Chen family. On the road of cultivation, if Chen Daoxuan still lacks something, it is probably someone who can point him in the right direction. In general, Chen Daoxuan's cultivation conditions are already top-notch. He can definitely set his sights higher and pursue a more distant future. Therefore, he wants to become the legendary sword cultivator recorded in Zhao Mu's White Jade Slip. To become that kind of sword cultivator, Chen Daoxuan really has only one problem to solve, that is, foundation building. And in detail, it should be the expansion of the Sea of Qi and the two major difficulties of foundation building. The difficulty of spiritual energy quenching is nothing to Chen Daoxuan. He has been practicing the dragon python swallowing heaven art. Now relying on his physical body, he can almost resist the lowest level of the first grade inferior magic weapon. Although this physical strength is of little use to a cultivator in the late stage of key refining, at least the difficulty of spiritual energy quenching is not difficult for him. Only the key sea expands. After the quenching of the true key, it transforms into the true essence, which will cause great pressure on the key sea. At that time, it will not be the key sea that expands, but the key sea that explodes. Therefore, in order to make the key sea expand smoothly, a pressure reducer must be installed in the key sea. Chen Daoxuan's thoughts diverged, and this pressure reducer must exist in the key sea. As far as Chen Daoxuan knows, only the life magic weapon that can exist in the key sea has this function, and can be taken into the key sea by the cultivator for nourishment. So, create a life key sea pressure reducer? Chen Daoxuan looked strange. He found that he was getting bolder and bolder. But think about it carefully, isn't the road of cultivation opened up step by these daring people? The predecessors could do it, why can't he? Chen Daoxuan? Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan's uneasy heart became firm again. No, maybe it shouldn't be called a pressure reducer, it should be called a true key storage device. When a cultivator builds his foundation, his true key will first surge, and in the process of surge, it will gradually transform into true essence. At the same time, the cultivator's Danshan key sea will also expand a little bit. In other words, the cultivator's key sea is stretched open by the surging true key or true essence. If the surging true essence is just enough to stretch the key sea. In other words, if the surge speed of the true essence is controllable, will the expansion of the key sea become smooth? Think about it carefully. What does the foundation building pill rely on to increase the probability of building the foundation? It is still relying on the foundation building pill to soothe the violent true essence. But the foundation building pill only soothes the violent true essence and does not reduce the total amount of true essence. Therefore, there is still a risk of Qi rupture and failure to break through. If there is such a life-saving magic weapon in the cultivator's danshan, it can collect the surging excess true Qi when the true Qi surges. It is equivalent to adding another danshan to the danshan Qi. It greatly reduces the pressure on the Qi when the cultivator builds the foundation. Make the expansion of the Qi controllable from uncontrollable. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan was slightly excited. If this kind of magic weapon can be invented, as long as there are sufficient resources, every cultivator of the Chen family can build a foundation in the future. In the future, the success rate of building a foundation will no longer rely on the 70% to 80% of the foundation building pill, but will be 100% successful. Building a foundation will no longer be a difficult hurdle on the path of cultivation for cultivators. Unfortunately, Chen Daoxuan thought of Chen Zion again. This method is of no use to Uncle 13. If other cultivators build a foundation, they are afraid that the surging true Qi will break the sea of Qi. For cultivators over the age of 60, the true Qi cannot be transformed into true essence and cannot support the sea of Qi. This is also the reason why the head of the Mo family took the risk to intercept the Chen family's cargo ship. After the age of 60, the hope of building a foundation for a cultivator will become slim, not to mention an old man like Chen Zion who has a lifespan of nearly 100 years. Chapter 107 Daochu, Take My Sword. 1 month later. Chuanghu Island Industrial Zone. In a production room of the Hongmeng Flying Sword Factory, Chen Daoxuan stood in front of a silver-white soul melting furnace, staring at it intently. Beside him, Chen Daochu, who was already 11 years old and looked like a little adult, stood with his hands down, looking at the furnace nervously. Don't be nervous. Chen Daoxuan seemed to have some feelings and comforted him without turning his head. Not as nervous as me. Chen Daochu swallowed his saliva. Seeing this, Chen Daoxuan smiled and continued to operate the furnace. Half an hour later, after a full 10 hours of smelting, the spiritual ore in the furnace was finally melted. TSK, Gishu Jingjin is worthy of being a second level spiritual ore. Less than 10 kilograms of Gishu Jingjin took several times the time of ordinary first level spiritual ore to refine. With a sigh, Chen Daoxuan operated the joystick and took out the refined Gishu Jingjin. At the same time, in the wrangling furnace in another production room, several materials refined from first grade spiritual ores were just taken out. Chen Daoxuan swept his spiritual sense and took the semi-finished materials in another workshop through the air. Two groups of spiritual liquids extracted from completely different spiritual ores appeared in front of him. One group was refined from Gishu Jingjin, and the other was refined from several first-grade spiritual ores. Now, Chen Daoxuan wanted to fuse the two. For this step, he could no longer use the wrangling furnace, because after this period of experimentation, Chen Daoxuan found that the wrangling formation could not fuse the spiritual charm of spiritual ores of different grades together. It seems that the fusion of the spiritual charm of spiritual ores of different grades is too delicate, and it must be operated by the refiner himself. Chen Daoxuan knew this may be the limit of the wrangling formation. If you want to complete more delicate operations, you must invent a new generation of wrangling formation, based on the existing wrangling formation. But he was not discouraged. After all, how can a first level formation solve all the problems of refining spiritual ores of all grades? That would be against the will of heaven. Put aside the distracting thoughts in your mind. Chen Daoxuan held his breath and slowly merged the two groups of spiritual liquids together bit by bit. If there were a refiner present, he would find that Chen Daoxuan was not only fusing the two groups of spiritual liquids, but also the spiritual charm in the spiritual liquids, which was also merged together bit by bit, indistinguishable from each other. The fusion of the spiritual charm of first level spiritual ore is easy to say, but Gishu Jingjin is a second level spiritual ore, which proves that Chen Daoxuan already has the ability to refine materials as a second level refiner. As for shaping and fusion formation, with Chen Daoxuan's comprehension, it is even more of a piece of cake. In other words, Chen Daoxuan can now be called a second level refiner. A second level refiner in the late stage of Qi refining is extremely rare even in a large sect like Cunning Sword sect. After all the spiritual liquids are fused, the next shaping is even easier to complete. At this point, Chen Daoxuan breathed a sigh of relief. While holding up the semi-finished embryo in the air, he turned his head to look at Chen Daoxuan and said, I mixed the second level Gishu Jingjin into your natal spiritual armor. Therefore, although it is a first level upper grade spiritual armor, the defensive ability it can exert is almost comparable to that of a second level lower grade defensive magic weapon. So you have to spray a few more mouthfuls of natal blood essence later in order to refine your natal spiritual armor, understand? Yeah. Chen Daoxuan looked at the semi-finished embryo in the air eagerly and nodded hurriedly. Seeing him like this, Chen Daoxuan nodded and concentrated on refining Chen Daoxuan's natal spiritual armor. After more than 3 hours, Chen Daoxuan's forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat, and his true energy was consumed by 70%. Finally, he engraved the array pattern to the 9th level. Compared with refining a flying sword, the difficulty of refining the natal spiritual armor is much greater. It is almost as difficult as refining a second level flying sword. The reason for this, it was because the array patterns on the natal spirit armor were more complex than those on the flying sword. Because it had to ensure that the spirit armor had no defensive weaknesses, it further increased the difficulty of refining. Daoxuan, hurry. Chen Daoxuan, who had been waiting for this moment, raised his true energy. Wow. 3 mouthfuls of natal blood essence spurted out in succession, covering the spirit armor embryo covered with array patterns. The next moment, the natal blood essence slowly merged into the embryo along with the array patterns, and Chen Daoxuan suddenly felt that he and this spirit armor had an indescribable blood connection. Not enough. Chen Daoxuan shouted. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan's face tightened, and he spurted out 2 mouthfuls of heart blood again. This time, Chen Daoxuan's breath at the 5th level of ki training instantly waned. Although his face was as pale as paper, his eyes were shining with excitement. Because he saw that the dense array patterns on the spirit armor were merging into the embryo along with his natal blood essence and disappeared. As a weapon refiner, he understood that this was a sign of the successful fusion of the magic weapon. This also meant that his life spirit armor was successfully refined. Alright. Chen Daoxuan retracted his true energy. Chen Daoxuan's life spirit armor was like a child, circling around Chen Daoxuan, full of spirituality. This word suddenly appeared in Chen Daoxuan's mind. This is another difference between life magic weapons and ordinary magic weapons. Although ordinary magic weapons also have spirituality, they are still far inferior to life magic weapons that have been integrated with the blood of the master. Daoxuan, try it on. Chen Daoxuan coughed when he saw Chen Daoxuan's oblivious look. Oh, okay. Chen Daoxuan reacted and had an idea. The life spirit armor was like a young swallow returning to its nest, constantly shrinking, and then turned into a ball of spiritual light and drilled directly into Chen Daoxuan's belly button. Chen Daoxuan was shocked at first, but soon he found that this ball of spiritual light did not cause any harm to him, and he couldn't help but touch his abdomen in surprise. It's amazing. After muttering this, Chen Daoxuan's consciousness moved. His life spirit armor instantly emerged from the surface of his body. At first, it seemed as if a ball of spiritual light enveloped his body. Then, the spiritual light faded, and a full body armor full of metal texture firmly protected Chen Daoxuan. This scene immediately attracted the Dao generation monks in other workshops who were working, and they all scanned their consciousness over. Chen Daoxuan found that there was even a little guy who had ruined his flying sword because of this. However, seeing the other party's childish face, he really couldn't bear to blame him. Let's go out and try this copy of the life spirit armor. After thinking about it, he glanced at the other workshops, shook his head, and transmitted a voice. Forget it, let's take it as a day off today. You can go and have a look together. Oh. Hearing this, all the Dao generation monks were excited. Although the workload of the flying sword factory is not large, staying in the factory every day is also a very torturous thing. Especially since these little guys are not very old. If they were on Earth, they would be a group of elementary school students. To be honest, Chen Daoxuan was very satisfied that this group of Dao generation monks could hold their temper. In a short while, a group of Dao generation monks came to a plain a few miles away from the industrial zone. Let's do it here. Chen Daoxuan descended and said. The others followed suit. It was not until Chen Daoxuan finished wearing his natal spiritual armor that Chen Daoxuan took out his Chen Guiying sword and said, "Are you ready?" "Yes." Chen Daoxuan nodded vigorously. Although he knew that his natal spiritual armor had amazing defensive capabilities, he still couldn't help being nervous. After all, the person in front of him was the young patriarch who taught him to cultivate and be a man since he was a child and respected him very much. Seeing Chen Daoxuan wearing a streamlined spiritual armor, but only less than 1.5 meters tall, Chen Daoxuan's childishness was aroused, and he laughed and said, "Daoxuan, take my sword." "Ah." Chen Daoxuan panicked and screamed in fear. Chapter 108 Armed Family Monks. Clang. The sword of Chen Guiying shone with light, slashing at Chen Daoxuan's spiritual armor, making a crisp sound of metal colliding. "It's okay. Haha, it's okay." Seeing that the spiritual armor of the natal spirit blocked Chen Daoxuan's attack, Chen Daoxuan, who was originally very nervous, suddenly laughed happily. Seeing him like this, Chen Daoxuan smiled and said, "Don't be too happy too soon. My sword just now was only equivalent to the attack of a 3rd level key refining cultivator holding a 1st level top grade magic weapon. You are carrying a 1st level top grade spiritual armor that is comparable to a 2nd level defensive magic weapon. It would be strange if you can't block it." At this point, Chen Daoxuan's expression became serious. "The next sword is the 5th level key refining. Be careful." Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan couldn't help but look serious. On the field, the other Dao generation cultivators also had a tense face and stared at Chen Daoxuan and Chen Daoxuan. Swish! The sword of Chen Guiying broke through the air, making a barely audible sound. The sword's blade was 9 feet long, like a stream of light, flying towards Chen Daoxuan. Chen Daoxuan continuously injected the true energy from his Danshan into his natal spirit armor. The next moment, the Chen Guiying sword and his natal spirit armor collided again, and a more violent roar sounded on the field. Then, an invisible shockwave swept across, blowing everyone's clothes rustling. The dust and smoke dissipated. Everyone looked closely and saw Chen Daoxuan standing in the air intact. Blocked. The Dao generation cultivators present were excited. Chen Daoxuan's heart couldn't help but get a little hot and asked, "How is it?" Chen Daoxuan moved his arms, feeling the powerful spiritual light blooming from his natal spirit armor, grinned and said, "It doesn't feel strong enough." Seeing that his attitude was completely different before and after, Chen Daoxuan knew that he was conquered by the powerful defense of his natal spirit armor. Now he probably feels that he can withstand all the attacks of the key refining cultivators. In other words, he is a little floating. Chen Daoxuan did not speak and asked him to get ready again. He slashed at Chen Daoxuan with another sword. This time, it was equivalent to a full strength attack from the 9th level of key refining. Since Chen Daoxuan himself was only at the 8th level of key refining, he used a trace of the secret of the wind chasing sword art in this sword. As the pinnacle of key refining cultivators, the 9th level of key refining cultivators can fully control the power that can be unleashed by a 1st level top grade flying sword. Even Chen Daoxuan today dare not underestimate it. After all, Chen Daoxuan's offensive power far exceeds the upper limit of key refining cultivators, but his defensive ability is only slightly stronger than that of a 9th level of key refining cultivators. This is based on the defensive ability he has, only after he has cultivated the stone sword art to perfection. Flying swords are offensive weapons no matter what. Even the defensive sword art emphasizes attack instead of defense, and it is almost impossible to have a sword art that is purely defensive. Therefore, the stone sword art is not so much a defensive sword art as a special offensive sword art. It emphasizes using attack to intercept attack. It is fundamentally different from a purely defensive magical weapon like the innate spirit armor. Boom. The power of the attack from the 9th level of key refining was so great that even the Dao generation cultivators who were watching were a little unsteady. Seeing such a violent attack, everyone was frightened and their faces turned pale. After all, most of the Dao generation cultivators present were only at the 2nd or 3rd level of key refining. Far from being as exaggerated as Chen Daoxuan and Chen Daolian's 5th level of key refining. Therefore, under the sweeping of the key wave, except for Chen Daolian, everyone else on the field was a little unsteady. After a while, With Chen Daoxuan's bottom as the center, a deep pit with a diameter of several meters appeared in front of everyone. Everyone knew that this was the tragic situation caused by the collision between the flying sword and Chen Daoxuan's innate spirit armor. But no one cared about this at the moment. They all cast their eyes on Chen Daoxuan. "How is it?" Chen Daoxuan asked loudly. "If you can't hold on, don't force it." Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan, who was about to give up, got stubborn and said loudly, "I'm fine. It feels like I was hit lightly by someone." Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan was suddenly moved. With this level of attack, Chen Daoxuan actually only felt a slight impact, which means that this attack is still a long way from breaking through the defense of the natal spirit armor. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan's face became solemn. "How much true energy do you have left?" Reporting to the young clan leader, more than 90%. Successively resisting the attacks equivalent to the 3rd, 5th, and 9th level of key refining cultivators, it actually only consumed less than 10% of Chen Daoxuan's true energy, which is a bit terrifying. "Daoxuan, for the next sword strike, I will use the wind-chasing sword out with all my strength. If you can resist it, this life spirit armor will be enough to let you dominate the key refining cultivators in the future." With Chen Daoxuan's 8th level key refining cultivation, he used the wind-chasing sword out with all his strength. Even though it was not as good as his strongest skill, the wind-chasing sword, it greatly exceeded the upper limit of the attack of the key refining cultivator. If the power of a key refining cultivator at the 9th level is 1 when he controls a 1st level upper grade flying sword, then the attack power that Chen Daoxuan can burst out when he uses the perfect level of the wind-chasing sword art is at least 2 or more. It has more than doubled. Chen Daoxuan seemed to know that the next sword strike was not simple. He immediately infused all the true energy in his body into his life spirit armor. His little face was tightly stretched, and he stared at the Chen Guiying sword hanging in front of Chen Daoxuan. In an instant, Chen Daoxuan felt his vision blurred, and the Chen Guiying sword disappeared. At the same time, Chen Daoxuan felt a piercing pain hitting his chest. This time, he finally couldn't maintain his body shape anymore, and was directly chopped off by Chen Daoxuan's sword. Cough cough cough. Hundreds of meters away, Chen Daoxuan lowered his body in a panic, and his life spirit armor retracted into his Danshan Ki Si. Chen Daoxuan first spit out 5 mouthfuls of blood, and then was pulled by Chen Daoxuan to do the life spirit armor defense experiment. At this moment, his face was extremely pale. Especially Chen Daoxuan's last sword, although it still did not reach the defense limit of the life spirit armor. But Chen Daoxuan's cultivation was limited after all, and he was also unable to exert the full defense ability of the life spirit armor. Therefore, he suffered a slight injury. Seeing a trace of blood at the corner of Chen Daoxuan's mouth, Chen Daoxuan took 2 steps closer, took his hand without saying anything, and used his true energy to travel around his body. "Young clan leader, I'm fine," Chen Daoxuan said shyly. After checking, it was found that Chen Daoxuan only suffered a little impact on the chest, and this injury was not even a slight injury. In fact, if Chen Daoxuan had not sprayed 5 mouthfuls of his own essence and blood in succession before, and was not in good condition, he would not have suffered even this little injury. This is a bit terrifying. The defensive ability of the life spirit armor is more than enough to withstand the attacks of ordinary key refining cultivators. It can even withstand attacks like Chen Daoxuan's that exceed the upper limit of key refining cultivators. What is this concept? If every cultivator of the Mo family had such a copy of the life spirit armor at the time, and no outsiders interfered with their battles, it would be a matter of 2 opinions who would win at that time. Chen Daoxuan felt that it was more likely that he would be defeated and escape, because the cultivation of the Mo family cultivators was almost all in the late stage of key refining. Even if Chen Daoxuan used the chasing wind and covering rain sword, it would be difficult for him to break through the opponent's defense in a short time. Since the opponent's defense could not be broken, the Mo family cultivators could let go and attack Chen Daoxuan. With Chen Daoxuan's defensive ability, he could not withstand the attacks of more than a dozen cultivators of the Mo family. If he didn't escape, would he wait to die? Chen Daoxuan's thoughts turned. If every cultivator of the Chen family could wear such a set of life-defining spiritual armor, the improvement of the family's strength would be a leap forward. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan's gaze towards Chen Daochu became even more ardent. Si estas escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas. Significa que descargaran y subieron sin esfuerzo te invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas y encontrarás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos géneros. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 109 New Training System. It's not just Chen Daoxuan. The other Dao generation cultivators all showed envy on their faces after seeing Chen Daochu wearing such a handsome and powerful natal spiritual armor. That little expression almost said, I wanted to. Seeing everyone like this, Chen Daoxuan felt funny and couldn't help but secretly calculate in his heart. The natal spiritual armor is different from the flying sword. Not only is it more difficult to refine, but most importantly, the cost is much higher than the flying sword. Armor is more expensive than swords. It seems that even in the world of immortal cultivation, this principle is the same. Refining a first grade upper grade flying sword, the cost is generally no more than 200 or 300 spirit stones, but the selling price is as high as about 500 spirit stones. Therefore, when the flying sword reaches the first grade upper grade, the profit will soar, and it will no longer be like the first grade lower grade and first grade middle grade flying swords, which may even lose money. As long as the refiner has the ability to refine the first grade upper grade flying sword, basically it will make a lot of money. It's just a matter of how much profit the refiner makes depending on the success rate. As for defensive magic weapons, generally, there are few sellers in the magic weapon market. Even in the high-end magic weapon market run by the Wu and Zhao families, there are few defensive magic weapons. First, this kind of magic weapon consumes a lot of materials, the cost of refining is high, and the price is even more exaggerated. Few cultivators can afford it. In addition, the big families do not want this kind of spiritual armor defense magic weapon to be rampant. In fact, looking at the spiritual armor defense experiment done by Chen Daoxuan, we can see the huge difference in strength between key refining cultivators when they are wearing armor and when they are not. The same to cultivators. One is wearing spiritual armor and the other is not. Unless the original strength gap between the two is as exaggerated as that between Chen Daoxuan and ordinary key refining late cultivators. Otherwise, the cultivator wearing spiritual armor will have a crushing advantage over the unarmored cultivator. The reason for this is that the cultivator wearing spiritual armor does not need to pay attention to the enemy's attack at all and can directly attack the enemy. Who can withstand this kind of shameless fighting style? It's like in ancient times on Earth. Armored soldiers and unarmored soldiers are completely two concepts. Although there are other factors affecting the world of immortal cultivation, it basically follows this rule. Among the cultivators of the same level, cultivators with defensive spiritual armor will often easily win against cultivators without defensive magic tools. This copy of life spiritual armor that Chen Daoxuan refined for Chen Daochu, excluding the labor cost of this second level refiner, the material consumption alone consumed about 200 kilograms of various first level spiritual ores and 10 kilograms of second level Gishu refined gold. The first level spiritual ore is an average of 3 spiritual stones per kilogram, which has reached 600 spiritual stones. Add 10 kilograms of Gishu refined gold, and the total cost is as high as about 2,100 spiritual stones. This is just the cost. If it is sold to the outside, how many spiritual stones should it be sold for? This price has far exceeded the limit that cultivators in the key refining stage can bear. It is indeed not a big problem for the Chen family to equip each of the Dao generation cultivators with a set of spiritual armor. But when the Fu generation cultivators grow up in the future, they will follow this standard. Even with the Chen family's wealth, they will be dragged down by the terrifying consumption of spiritual armor. Of course, Chen Daoxuan could also build the spiritual armor according to the simplest method in the Jade Slip. In that case, he could save 1,500 spiritual stones worth of Gishu Jingjin, and the cost would be reduced by more than half. But in this way, the defense of the natal spiritual armor would be greatly weakened. This made Chen Daoxuan a little difficult to choose. From the bottom of his heart, he didn't really want to equip the Chen family cultivators with weakened spiritual armor. In his opinion, either don't make it, or make the best. It would save the trouble of adding various high-level materials and excluding the low-level materials in the spiritual armor when upgrading the natal spiritual armor in the future. However, among the Dao generation cultivators, except for Chen Daoxuan and Chen Daoxuan, the utilization rate of resources by other Dao generation cultivators was too low. It was so low that Chen Daoxuan felt a little dissatisfied. The Dao generation cultivators have been practicing for almost 2 years. Chen Daoxuan and Chen Daoxuan are already 5th level key refining cultivators and are almost about to enter the 6th level. As for the other Dao generation cultivators, except for Chen Daoxuan who reached the 4th level of key refining, the best one was only at the 3rd level of key refining. It seemed that it took more than 2 years to break through from the 1st level of key refining to the 3rd level of key refining, which was an exaggerated progress. But you have to know that the various resources that the Chen family has invested in the Dao generation cultivators, even the inner disciples of Kainiu and Sword Sect have to shout that they are rich. As long as the poison of the pill does not affect the physical body, the spiritual pills will be eaten to death, and the treasures for auxiliary cultivation, the 1st level water spirit beads are considered low grade, and even the 2nd level water spirit beads are directly used for cultivation. In addition, the spiritual rice is constantly supplied. As long as the Dao generation cultivators can eat it, the Chen family will openly supply it, no matter how much they eat. Unless it is some rare cultivation resources that the Chen family can hardly buy from Guang'an Prefecture with spiritual stones. In terms of the supply of basic cultivation resources, the Chen family has really done the ultimate. That's it. In more than 2 years, they have only broken through from the 1st level of key refining to the 2nd and 3rd levels of key refining, which can be called waste. How can Chen Daoxuan be satisfied with this? Therefore, after seeing the expectant eyes of the Dao generation cultivators, Chen Daoxuan did not respond immediately, because he already had a plan to reform the family system in his mind. Like in the past, regardless of the aptitude, the progress of cultivation, or the level of refining, the Chen family would supply the best resources. Chen Daoxuan did not plan to do this again. This practice was simply a big pot meal, which greatly hurt the enthusiasm of the Chen family cultivators to strive. He wanted to change the training system. This training system was slightly different from the training system of the big family, which only determined the supply of resources based on the quality of the spiritual roots. But it was also quite close. Chen Daoxuan was going to propose this training system at the next clan meeting. As for the expectant eyes of the other Dao generation cultivators, Chen Daoxuan pretended not to see them. For the long-term development of the family, he had to be ruthless enough. Since the rules were to be established, they should be treated equally. Otherwise, the rules would become meaningless over time. In this regard, family cultivators were more vigilant than sect cultivators. Because family monks often have blood ties, they are more likely to be partial to each other and bend the law. This kind of partiality seems to be a consideration for the affection of the same family, but in fact it is extremely harmful to the family itself. It can even completely destroy a family. This, Chen Daoxuan has to be vigilant. Now the Chen family has only 11 monks, and it seems that everything is easy to handle. But some troubles are buried when the family is small. Chen Daoxuan knows that small families rely on unity, while large families rely on systems. If the Chen family wants to develop into a family like the Zhao family, or even a larger family than the Zhao family, it can only rely on the system. Reform always brings pain. But fortunately, there are not many monks in the Chen family now, which means that the reform will not affect many stacker holders. The resistance to reform is not great. If the current training system of the Chen family is used for the monks of the Fu generation, then reform will be carried out. When interests are infringed, there will be more family monks who oppose it. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan felt more and more that reforming the family system was an urgent matter. Chapter 110 Clan System Reform. A few months later, a spiritual rice transport ship docked at the port of Xuanhu Island. Chen Ziyan flew down. Looking at the busy harbor, he was full of joy. Chen Ziyan found that compared with when he was in charge of the family, the current Chen family not only had a leap forward improvement in the strength of the cultivators, the mortals of the family seemed to have more vitality than before. At the port, a small market town was quietly established around the busy port terminal. This small market town was a pilot project that Chen Daoxuan instructed the county magistrate of Changping County, Chen Zhi. At the current development speed, this small market town is entirely possible to develop into a new county or even a county town in the future. Chen Zion stood in the air, observed the busy clansmen, and then used the wind control technique to fly towards the Chen family's spiritual vein. After an incense stick, Chen Zion met Chen Daoxuan in person in the courtyard of his spiritual mansion. Uncle 13. You're back. Seeing Chen Zion, Chen Daoxuan's face was full of surprise. Yeah. Chen Zion smiled and nodded. Your seaport market town is well done. I feel it is more prosperous than Changping County. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan shook his head. Compared with the prosperity of Guang'an Prefecture's port, it is far behind. Hearing this, Chen Zion almost couldn't breathe, glared at him and said, I just praised you, and you don't know your last name, right? Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan smiled awkwardly. Comparing the current Chen family with Guang'an Prefecture, it is indeed a bit ignorant. However, Chen Daoxuan is not without confidence in this, because in his previous life, the country where he lived had created such a miracle. In a few decades, a small fishing village was turned into an international metropolis. Although the Chen family does not have the various technological advantages of the previous life, it also did not have the wonderful immortal cultivation arts of the immortal world in the previous life. The two laughed and talked for a while. Chen Daoxuan told Chen Zion about his ideas for the reform of the family system. After listening to his ideas, Chen Zion frowned and remained silent for a long time. He raised his head and said, you are right. The Chen family is not the same as before. Although there are only 11 cultivators now, the largest group of food generation members are already 3 years old. In 2 years, they should enter the clan school and embark on the path of immortality. By then, if the current family system is used, it will inevitably cause great chaos. However, your current practice will undoubtedly make those Dao generation members with poor qualifications dissatisfied. Who knows that? After hearing this, Chen Daoxuan laughed. I'm not a spiritual stone. How can I make everyone like and satisfied? As long as the new family system is beneficial to the family, I will do my best to promote it, and no one can stop it. When saying this, Chen Daoxuan's face inadvertently revealed a hint of domineering. Seeing him like this, Chen Zion said with satisfaction, you are becoming more and more like a qualified patriarch. Uncle 13, what do you mean by like? Chen Daoxuan was slightly dissatisfied. Based on your current tone, it can only be like, ha ha ha. Chen Zion touched his beard and laughed. The next day, in Chen Daoxuan's courtyard, 11 Dao generation monks of the Chen family gathered together. Compared with last year, Chen Daoxuan did not drive out the younger Dao generation monks. Because this year, even the youngest Dao generation monks are over 6 years old. In this world, 6-year-old children can already help their families with farming and work, and it is common for 11 or 12-year-olds to get married and start a family. Although monks are different from ordinary people, they are undoubtedly much more mature than children in their previous lives. Dao generation monks of different ages sat in the courtyard, just like little adults. Among them, Chen Daoxuan had the most serious expression. He glanced at everyone. Chen Daoxuan said, now that everyone is here, I declare that this year's Chen clan meeting is officially open. After a pause, he looked at Chen Zion and said, like last year, let the old patriarch introduce our business in the Guang'an Prefecture Sanxiu market. Hearing this, Chen Zion nodded and said, last year, our Hongmeng flying sword shop opened a branch in Guang'an Prefecture. In general, the magic weapon market in the Sanxiu market is now completely monopolized by our family. This alone can bring the family at least more than 150,000 spirit stones of net income every year. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan knew that what was restricting their shop's profits in the Sanxiu market was no longer the market, but productivity. The Chen family can only produce a maximum of 900 flying swords per month. Excluding the flying swords traded with the mermaids, the number of flying swords sold in the Guang'an Prefecture Sanxiu market every month is only 700 to 800. After deducting the taxes paid to the Zhao family, the profit of 150,000 spirit stones a year is already the limit. Now the Chen family wants to expand the profit of the flying sword shop. There are only two ways. The first is to continue to expand the flying sword factory in the industrial zone and improve productivity. The second is to increase the output of first grade medium grade flying swords and even first grade high grade flying swords. Compared with the profit of less than 20 spirit stones for a first grade low grade flying sword, the profit of a first grade medium grade flying sword is as high as more than 50 spirit stones, and the profit of a first grade high grade flying sword is as high as 200 to 300 spirit stones. Of course, Chen Daoxuan does not intend to produce first grade high grade flying swords, because this thing is difficult to sell in the casual cultivator market. The profit of first grade high grade magic tools is high, but the Chen family must also consider the purchasing power of casual cultivators. If it is placed in the core business district, there is still a market for first grade high grade flying swords. But the magic tool market in the core business district is basically monopolized by the Zhao family and the Wu family. If the Chen family wants to intervene, they must compete with the Zhao and Wu families. This is what Chen Daoxuan does not want to see for the time being. What he wants to do most now is to fully develop the magic tool market in the casual cultivator market. Because as long as the market for magic weapons in the scattered cultivator market is fully developed, the profits from this alone will allow the Chen family to live a very comfortable life. Only 700 or 800 flying swords a month are far from satisfying the market for magic weapons of scattered cultivators. After discussing the most important flying sword business of the family, Chen Daoxuan coughed and said, after talking about the production and sales of the family's flying swords, let's talk about the issue of the cultivation system of cultivators in the clan that everyone is most concerned about. Hearing this, everyone straightened their spines. I know that for more than a year, everyone has been working day and night to produce flying swords in the flying sword factory. It's really hard. Here, on behalf of the family, I thank you for your efforts. As he said this, Chen Daoxuan stood up and bowed to everyone. Seeing this, everyone stood up and returned the greeting to Chen Daoxuan. Sit down, sit down. Chen Daoxuan stretched out his hand. Hearing this, everyone hesitated and sat down again. But for some reason, everyone was already a little uneasy. The young patriarch was always very serious in front of everyone. Being so polite to everyone all of a sudden this time is not a good sign, no matter how you look at it. Sure enough, Chen Daoxuan's next words verified everyone's guess. I think that the current system of cultivating monks in the family is no longer suitable for the development of the family. It has reached the point where it has to be reformed. Chen Daoxuan said in shock. Chapter 111 Family Organizational Structure. Hearing Chen Daoxuan's words, everyone held their breath. The training system for monks is closely related to every monk present. Chen Daoxuan paused and continued, in the past 2 years, the family has always adopted a fixed training method for the training of the Dao generation monks. What is fixed training? There is enough spiritual pills, no shortage of spiritual rice, and there is an adequate supply of water spirit beads and spiritual energy. As a result, I found that the Dao generation monks are inevitably slack in their practice and learning of the 100 arts of cultivation. After speaking, Chen Daoxuan glanced at everyone. More than a year ago, I taught Daochu and the others how to refine the first level low grade flying sword Red Shadow flying sword, but more than a year has passed. Chen Daochu, tell me, how many first level low grade magic tools do you know now? Chen Daochu was suddenly called, stood up and stammered, unable to speak. After a long while, he shyly said, young patriarch, I have only mastered the refining of 3 first grade inferior flying swords. Who knew that Chen Daoxuan's eyes flashed with surprise when he heard this, but he still coughed. It took me a year to master the refining of 3 first grade inferior magic tools. Do you know how long it took me to master all the first grade inferior magic tools in the family? It took you less than 2 years to learn to refine tools. Chen Daoxuan stretched out 2 fingers. And the environment for you to learn to refine tools is so good now. Tell me, are you worthy of the cultivation of the family? Chen Daoxuan's voice suddenly rose. You don't think that refining the red shadow flying sword like a tool every day is all you have for the rest of your life, right? Hearing this reprimand, everyone lowered their heads. Even those Dao generation monks who were too young and had not yet learned to refine tools also lowered their heads and dared not speak. In view of your lazy attitude, I have decided to adopt a competitive training system within the family in the future. I want those monks who are motivated and willing to work hard to have more training resources, and those monks who are unwilling to work hard and lazy will only enjoy the most basic training resource guarantees. Tell me, what kind of monk do you want to be? Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. Then they all said in unison, young patriarch, we will not be lazy. Good. Chen Daoxuan nodded with satisfaction. It seems that everyone supports me to reform the family's monk training system. Regardless of what everyone thought, Chen Daoxuan said to himself, in this case, I will announce the specific policies of the family's monk training system in the future. From today on, the family's monk training system will be divided into 3 levels. Basic level, elite level, and core level. Each level system has huge differences in the cultivation resources enjoyed. Moreover, even if you enjoy core level training resources, don't be proud and complacent, because the family has corresponding assessments waiting for you every year. Once you fail to complete the corresponding assessment, you will be downgraded by resources. There is no need for those monks who are temporarily at the basic level to be discouraged. As long as you work hard, you can also pass the assessment and enjoy higher level resource training. In short, in the future, your training will no longer be fixed resources, but will enjoy different resource supplies, based on the degree of effort you each put in. Hearing this, the Dao generation monks present finally breathed a sigh of relief. This system sounds very fair. The capable ones go up, the weak ones go down. No one thinks of themselves as weak, especially since the Dao generation monks present are still so young, and at the age of striving for strength and competitiveness. In fact, this training system has, to some extent, excluded monks with poor qualifications from the core layer, because the cultivation of monks is very dependent on qualifications. With the same resources, people with good spiritual roots will progress faster than those with poor spiritual roots. Even if the monks with high spiritual roots practice less than half of the monks with low spiritual roots every day, they will progress faster than the monks with low spiritual roots. But this world is so unfair. If you want absolute fairness, you can only find it in your dreams. Of course, Chen Daoxuan also gave monks with poor spiritual roots a chance, that is, to make achievements in the 100 arts of cultivating immortals. For example, a monk with low spiritual roots, although he practices slowly, is very talented in making talismans, so he also has great training value. The family is not stingy with spending more resources to cultivate such talents. But the cultivators who have neither the talent for cultivation nor the talent for alchemy, refining, making talismans, and array formations can only stay at the bottom of the family and be a brick of the family. Even if we take a step back, it is better to have the protection of the family than to be a casual cultivator. Seeing that all the Dao generation cultivators looked like they were injected with chicken blood, Chen Daoxuan was satisfied. I thought that some people would be dissatisfied with the introduction of this system. But unexpectedly, everyone was very confident in themselves and felt that they were not inferior to others. Good thing. Chen Daoxuan looked at the high-spirited appearance of everyone and grinned. After a while, he tightened his face again and continued, there is another thing, that is, the training period of the family cultivators. This time, everyone was a little panicked. If the competitive training method is said, everyone can still accept it. If the family training has a time limit, once the training period is exceeded, where will the Chen family cultivators go? Although they are anxious, everyone knows that the young patriarch will never abandon his clan members. Seeing the calm attitude of the crowd, Chen Daoxuan nodded. From now on, my Chen family cultivators will be required to undergo compulsory training for 9 years from the time they enter the clan school. During this period, the cultivators will enjoy the family's free training, and the training level will be based on the 3 levels I just described. After 9 years, you will graduate from the clan school. At that time, you will have 2 choices. First, to work in a position arranged by the clan, and second, to continue your studies. Chen Daoxuan paused. If you choose to work, you will naturally receive a salary, which will be your main source of cultivation resources in the future. As for continuing your studies, the family will bear the resources for your studies, but since this is no longer compulsory training, the family can persuade you to withdraw at any time, based on your performance. Hearing this, everyone finally understood that this training system was not so much formulated for them as it was for the Fu generation clan members who were about to enter the clan school. Anyway, their Dao generation cultivators had never entered any clan school from beginning to end. At the beginning, it was Chen Daoxuan who taught them hand in hand in his cave mansion. Then, after the family spiritual vein was established, they moved to a spiritual vein with a better environment. As for the school that was about to be completed in the spiritual vein, they had never enjoyed it for a day. Maybe everyone has guessed that this training system is more for the monks of the Fu generation. After all, your environment was much more difficult back then, and the family did not have the ability to establish a family school. Speaking of this, Chen Daoxuan's voice was a little low. Everyone also thought of the difficult days of the family more than a year ago, and they all fell silent. At this time, Chen Daoxuan stood up and bowed his hands and said, "Young patriarch, we all know that these policies you have formulated are all based on the interests of the family. We are also part of the family and are willing to make our own contributions to the family. Speaking of not enjoying the family's compulsory training, have you ever enjoyed it, young patriarch?" Finally, I heard a pleasant word from Chen Daoxuan. Chen Daoxuan said with relief, "It may be a little late for you to enter the clan school, but the resources of the 9-year compulsory training of the family will still be provided to you. Not only that, you will also receive an annual salary from the family for working in the flying sword factory and the flying sword shop. Of course, the annual salary of the family is paid in the form of family contribution points. You can take a look at the detailed family contribution system after the meeting." Swallowing his saliva, Chen Daoxuan continued, "After talking about the family training system, let's talk about the organizational structure of the family. The organizational structure means the division of power in the family." The young Dao generation monks were still confused, but the teenage boys like Chen Daoxuan already knew what it meant and perked up. Chapter 112, Division of Family Power. In Wangxinghe, the major immortal cultivation families usually adopt the elders council system to manage the family. That is, the first elder, the second elder, the third elder, etc. are established to manage various family affairs. To be honest, from Chen Daoxuan's point of view, this management system is simply inefficient. Because the elders council system has a huge problem, the division of responsibilities is unclear. The elders of the elders council seem to be the most powerful people besides the clan leader, but it is not clear which family affairs each elder is in charge of. For small matters, the elders can intervene and manage them. For big matters, the elders and the clan leader sit down to discuss together, and finally the clan leader makes the final decision. In this way, if something goes wrong, even the specific person in charge cannot be found. Even if the family divides the powers of the elders, the family is large, and the people below are not clear which elder is in charge of which aspect, which makes it easy for the government orders to not be effectively implemented. Therefore, Chen Daoxuan is determined to abolish the elders council system. In other words, he wants to make major changes based on the elders council. At the clan meeting, just when everyone thought that Chen Daoxuan would propose the family elder system, Chen Daoxuan unexpectedly proposed a new system. Department management system? Hearing this new term, everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. The Dao generation cultivators were better. After all, they were young and had a stronger ability to accept. Whether it was family elders or department heads, they were basically new words to them. But Chen Zion on the side frowned. The family elder system was the management system adopted by most families in Wangxinghe. As for the department management system proposed by Chen Daoxuan, he had never heard of it. However, Chen Daoxuan came up with quite a few new things, such as naming the workshop as a factory, changing the name of the clan school to Changping No. 1 Ziuxan Primary School, and so on. Seeing everyone's doubts, Chen Daoxuan explained, "Yes, it is the department management system. Although there are many immortal seedlings in our Chen family now, the oldest of the Fu generation is only 3 years old, and the youngest has just been born. Even if these children have entered the immortal path, in a short period of time, the cultivation of our family's cultivators will be at a relatively low level. It is not possible for us to promote a cultivator in the key refining period to be the family elder, right? If this is said out, won't others laugh at it? Chen Daoxuan found a random reason to talk nonsense. In fact, in Guanghan Prefecture, key refining families set up key refining 9th level cultivators as elders. Hearing this, Chen Zion breathed a sigh of relief. He originally thought that Chen Daoxuan was going to play tricks again, but he didn't expect that this department management system was just a substitute for the family elder system. Thinking of this, Chen Zion was relieved. Seeing the relieved expression of his 13th uncle, Chen Daoxuan breathed a sigh of relief. He was not afraid that the Dao generation cultivators would oppose him, and in fact, no Dao generation cultivator dared to oppose his decision. The only thing that Chen Daoxuan was worried about was that his uncle 13 would not support his decision. If Chen Zion objected, and he was the patriarch of the family, it would be difficult for Chen Daoxuan to implement the department management system. Since it is a department management system, then in the future, all matters within the family will be divided into specific departments for management. Chen Daoxuan paused. Now our Chen family has the following matters. The first is the management of ordinary mortals in the family. This part of the work was originally managed by Chen Zhi, the magistrate of Changping County, but in the future, I will hand over this work to the monks of the family. I call it the People's Livelihood Department, and the manager is the Minister of the People's Livelihood Department. In addition to the management of mortals in the family, the more important part is naturally the management of the monks in the family. Speaking of the management of the monks in the family, everyone perked up. Everyone is a monk. They may not be interested in managing ordinary people, but they are obviously still interested in managing the monks in the family. Seeing this, Chen Daoxuan smiled and said, for any cultivation power, education is the top priority. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is the foundation of a cultivation power. Therefore, the second department of the family, I call it the Ministry of Education, and the manager is the Minister of Education, who is responsible for coordinating the education of the family's fairy seedlings. The third department is the Ministry of Commerce, which manages the transactions between the cultivators within the family's influence. The fourth department is the Ministry of Foreign Trade, which manages the transactions between the family and external forces. The fifth department is the Ministry of Industry, which is responsible for coordinating the production of family magic tools, elixirs, and talismans. The sixth department is the Ministry of Agriculture, which is responsible for coordinating the development of the family's spiritual fields and the planting of spiritual medicines. The seventh department is the Spiritual Vein Management Department, referred to as the Spiritual Management Department, which is responsible for managing the family's spiritual veins, including the cultivation, promotion, and maintenance of the spiritual veins. The eighth department is the Ministry of Justice, which is responsible for judging the cultivators who violate the family law within the family's influence. The ninth department is the Police Department, which is responsible for arresting the cultivators who violate the law within the family's influence. The 10th department is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is responsible for the communication between the family and external forces. Chen Daoxuan mentioned 10 departments in one breath. Among them, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Police, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are all empty shells for the time being. Other departments, except for the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Foreign Trade, and the Ministry of People's Livelihood, are in full swing for the time being. The Ministry of Commerce, which is responsible for the internal transactions of the family, is basically non-existent. What is there to trade with 11 key refining cultivators? However, from Chen Daoxuan's simple description, everyone can also see that this organizational structure is quite rigorous. Almost all aspects of the family's temporary involvement are included, and the division of responsibilities is clear. There is no worry about wrangling in the future. Chen Zion on the side seemed to have discovered the problem and asked, Daoxuan, Are the so-called legal department and police department you set up conflicting in terms of authority? As far as I know, all the major families have adopted law enforcement teams to arrest and judge illegal monks. Uncle 13, you are right. The powers of these two departments do hinder each other, but I did it on purpose. He paused. You all know that the law enforcement team is the most important department to maintain the stability within the family. But at the same time, its power is too great, combining the power of arrest and trial. If the person in charge of the law enforcement team or the members within it bends the law for personal gain, how much harm will it bring to the family? Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan was silent. Although his vision was not as broad as Chen Daoxuan, a time traveler, he was not stupid. How could he not know the situation that Chen Daoxuan said? For example, the law enforcement team of the Zhao family was really a department that even the monks within the Zhao family were afraid of. They arrest you and sentence you as they say. Except for the top few big wigs in the Zhao family, outsiders have no right to interfere. This is also the reason why Chen Daoxuan met a casual cultivator named Zhang San when he first went to the casual cultivator market. He was so scared when he saw the cultivators of the Zhao family law enforcement team. As a result, over time, the family cultivators will definitely feel resentful towards this law enforcement team, which will affect the internal stability of the family. This is something Chen Daoxuan does not want to see. Chapter 113 Teacher Selection. Seeing the confused expressions of the Dao generation monks present, Chen Daoxuan smiled and said, of course, some of the departments I divided up don't even have specific things. There are still some things in the future of the family that have not been divided into new departments. For example, the family's monk army, financial department, tax department, etc. Most of the departments I divided up have to wait until the Fu generation monks grow up before there is manpower to set up. He paused and continued, but there is a department that needs to be set up urgently, and that is the Ministry of Education. At this point, Chen Daoxuan's expression became serious. Everyone also recovered their spirits. Just now, Chen Daoxuan's bombardment was so overwhelming that everyone was a little overwhelmed. Now that we talk about the Ministry of Education alone, everyone finally came to their senses. The Ministry of Education, as the young clan leader said, is a clan school. It seems that everyone's intentions can be seen from their expressions. Chen Daoxuan pursed his lips and smiled. Don't think that the education department refers to the school being built in my Chen family's spiritual vein. That would be a big mistake. To be precise, in the future, all schools in my Chen family will be managed by the education department, but the education department does not only refer to the Changping No. 1 Zeuxan primary school. In fact, everyone can see from the name of the clan school that Changping No. 1 Zeuxan primary school, since there is the first, there will be the second, third, and fourth in the future. Since there is a primary school, there will be a middle school and a university in the future. Seeing that everyone was confused again, Chen Daoxuan coughed and said, of course, the current education department has only the Changping No. 1 Zeuxan primary school as its direct institution. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan laughed, thinking that Chen Daoxuan was just bragging again. The Dao generation monks looked excited and were attracted by the family splendor described by Chen Daoxuan, and they wanted to die for the family immediately. The military spirit is available. Seeing everyone's state, Chen Daoxuan nodded with satisfaction. The first difficulty facing our clan school is the problem of insufficient teaching staff. Now there are only 11 monks in my Chen family, including Chen Daoxuan who is still in Guanghan Prefecture. This number of people must not only meet the production work of the flying sword factory, but also take into account the education work of the clan school. Therefore, in the next few years, everyone may be very busy, and you must be mentally prepared. Hearing this, everyone stood up and said loudly, we are willing to go through fire and water for the family. Seeing everyone's attitude, Chen Daoxuan was overjoyed and stretched out his hand and said, sit down, sit down. Seeing this scene, he even felt guilty for reducing the resources of those Dao generation monks with poor qualifications. But soon, this guilt was ruthlessly abandoned by him. Because Chen Daoxuan knew that as the patriarch of a clan, the most taboo is womanly kindness. Chen Daoxuan can break the rules for the Dao generation monks today. Will he open a backdoor for the Fu generation monks in the future? Will he open it for the Z generation monks in the future? In this way, the family is in danger. What's even more terrifying is that Chen Daoxuan, as the head of the family, is a role model for the family members. If he takes the lead in bending the law for personal gain, the family members will follow suit. This is what is meant by the upper beam is crooked, the lower beam is crooked. By then, the family will collapse in an instant. Even if Chen Daoxuan is powerful and can suppress all opposition and reorganize the family, the Chen family will inevitably suffer a great loss of vitality and even fail to recover. Wait until everyone sits down. Chen Daoxuan's voice became serious again. Next, I will talk about the issue of teachers in the clan school. He paused. I plan to divide the clan school into majors according to the various inheritances of the family. It is temporarily divided into weapon refining class, alchemy class, talisman making class and swordsman class. The first year of elementary school is mainly a hodgepodge of learning, and the school will teach a little bit of all the professional basics. Wait until the second year, and then divide the classes according to the professional scores of the Fu generation monks. But now there is a problem. I can be the teacher of our weapon refining class and swordsmanship class for the time being, but there is no teacher for the alchemy class and talisman making class. At this point, Chen Daoxuan glanced at everyone. Seeing this scene, the other Dao generation monks also backed off. As for refining weapons, they still have some confidence. After all, they have been refining flying swords day and night for more than a year. After refining so many flying swords, even those with poor talent have mastered the basics of the formation pattern of the first level magic weapon. At least there is no problem in teaching newcomers who know nothing. But making talismans and refining pills are difficult for them. Although they know that, since Chen Daoxuan said so, it proves that there must be related inheritance in the family. But whether it is refining pills or making talismans, which one can be learned easily? Especially refining pills, which is said to be one of the 3 most difficult things in the world of immortal cultivation, along with refining instruments and array formations. Seeing that everyone backed off, Chen Daoxuan frowned slightly, and just as he was about to personally call out the names, Chen Daoxuan and Chen Daolian stood up at the same time. Why are you standing up? Chen Daoxuan was surprised to see Chen Daolian standing up. You can stand up, but I can't. Chen Daolian glared at Chen Daoxuan without showing any weakness, and turned around and said, "Young patriarch, I want to learn to refine pills." Oh. Chen Daoxuan smiled. Why are you thinking about learning to refine pills? Report to the young patriarch. After a year of refining flying swords, I found that I have no interest in refining instruments, and my progress in learning refining instruments is almost the slowest among many Dao generation cultivators. At this point, Chen Daolian's voice was a little low. So, I want to learn alchemy, but my talent for alchemy is not as bad as my talent for refining weapons, right? Chen Daoxuan was speechless for a moment after hearing this. This is the disadvantage of not testing the talents of the Dao generation cultivators and forcing them to do something. However, in order to increase the output of the Hongmeng Flying Sword Factory, there was nothing that could be done. After all, Chen Daoxuan and Chen Daolian were the oldest group of Dao generation cultivators. Chen Daoxuan was not so crazy as to force a 5-year-old child into the factory. Sit down first, and we will discuss the matter of learning alchemy in detail after our clan meeting. Yes. Chen Daolian nodded obediently and sat down. After speaking, Chen Daoxuan looked at Chen Daoxuan again, frowned and said, "Why did you stand up again?" Chen Daoxuan felt a little nervous for some reason, but still said with courage, "I feel that I'm getting more and more proficient in refining weapons. I hope to be a refining teacher in the clan school. Didn't I say it? I will teach refining weapons. With your level of mediocre skills, what can you teach?" Chen Daoxuan said unhappily. But Chen Daoxuan held it in for a long time and said, "But you are so busy on weekdays, and there are too many things waiting for you to deal with in the family. If you teach the sword class and the refining class, I'm afraid you will be too busy. I want to help you." At the end, Chen Daoxuan's voice was almost inaudible. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan's soft spot seemed to be touched. After a long time, Chen Daoxuan nodded and said, okay, then adieu, I will teach the talisman making class. So far, the first batch of teachers for Changping number 1 Zeuxan Primary School has been determined. Chapter 114. With such clan members, there is no need to worry about the family's prosperity. The clan meeting was over. All the Dao generation monks left Chen Daoxuan's courtyard with mixed feelings, except Chen Daolian, who was quietly waiting on the side. Wait for me outside for a while, I'll talk to the old clan leader. Chen Daoxuan ordered. Okay. Chen Daolian nodded. Watching Chen Daolian leave the courtyard gate, Chen Zion turned his head and looked at Chen Daoxuan and said, what you just said, that you will form a clan monk army in the future, is it true or false? The Dao generation monks may not have understood the deep meaning of Chen Daoxuan's words, but Chen Zion understood. Monks are a group of people who possess extraordinary powers. Why should we distinguish the army from them? Since there is a clan monk army, it means that the other part of the monks are non-combat sequences. Chen Zion is now a little confused about what Chen Daoxuan is going to do, but he always feels that he is going to make a big show. Because when it comes to the monk army, Chen Zion can't help but think of the monk army in Zenon Pass more than 50 years ago. It's just that Chen Zion felt that the monk army mentioned by Chen Daoxuan might not be the same as the monk army in Zenon Pass. After a moment of silence, Chen Daoxuan said, Uncle 13, are you worried that I will take the monk army of the family to the battlefield of Chuan Kingdom in the future? It's good that you know. Chen Zion sighed. Back then, all the monks of the family with the word Zion were blinded by the huge benefits of the battlefield of Chuan Kingdom, so they put all the monks of the family into it. It was also because of this move that almost led to the destruction of my entire Chen family. Speaking of the 12 monks of the word Zion who died in the battle at Zenon Pass, even after more than 50 years, Chen Zion still couldn't let it go. Daoxuan, I know that with the current development speed of the Chen family, you will definitely set foot on the battlefield of Chuan Kingdom in the future, but you have to promise me that no matter what, you can't put all the strength of the family into it, and you must be reserved. Chen Zion said, staring at him intently. Okay, I promise you. Chen Daoxuan nodded. Hearing this, Chen Zion finally breathed a sigh of relief. Chen Daoxuan was puzzled. Uncle 13, how do you know that my Chen family will definitely go to the battlefield of Chuan Kingdom in the future? Hearing this, Chen Zion laughed. Small families may be able to temporarily avoid going to the battlefield of Chuan Kingdom, but it is difficult for large families to avoid it. Do you mean that Carnean Sword Sect forces large families to go to the battlefield? Chen Daoxuan was surprised. Not so. Chen Zion shook his head. On the one hand, there are many interests that large families cannot give up on the battlefield of Chuan Kingdom, which can quickly help cultivators grow up. On the other hand, after more than 400 years of war, what do you think of our relationship with Chuan Kingdom and the Zuan King Dao League behind it? Fight to the death. After thinking for a long time, Chen Daoxuan used this word to describe it. That's right, it's a fight to the death. Chen Zion sighed. In this case, why do large families go to the battlefield of Chuan Kingdom? Can't you see through it? When the nest is overturned, the eggs will be broken. Unknowingly, the fate of Wang Xinghei's independent cultivators and the major Immortal Cultivation families has long been tied to Carnean Sword Sect. If Wang Xinghei loses the war with Chuan Kingdom, Zuan King Dao League will counterattack Wang Xinghei. What a miserable scene it will be at that time. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan shuddered. No wonder the major families of Wang Xinghei are increasingly supporting this war. It's not just about interests, because the major families have also seen clearly that they have long been in a relationship of life and death with Chuan Kingdom. One of the two sides must fall completely. Do you expect Chuan Kingdom to be kind to the major Zeuxan families of Wang Xinghei after defeating Carnean Sword Sect? Think about those Chuan slaves captured by the major Zeuxan families. No one thinks that the other party can let them go generously. Anyone who holds this fluke mentality is either stupid or bad. Chatted for a while. Chen Daoxuan watched Chen Zion drive away and then sent a voice transmission. Come in. A moment. Chen Daolian walked in leisurely, looking at the graceful girl in front of him. Chen Daoxuan could still see a trace of the timid look when she was selected from the many Chen children in her eyes. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan couldn't help but smile. Daolian, have you thought it through? Report to the young clan leader. I have thought it through, Chen Daolian said with a firm look. Chen Daoxuan nodded. Learning alchemy is not an easy thing. Let's do this. You will follow me to learn alchemy for the next 2 years. The work at the Flying Sword Factory will be temporarily stopped. Who knew that? After hearing this, Chen Daolian's pretty face was full of anxiety and said, young clan leader, how can this be done? Chen Daoxuan left the factory to continue to learn alchemy with you. If I also leave the factory, there will only be 3 people left in the factory, right? What's wrong with 3 people? Just let them work longer hours. I said that in the next few years, every cultivator of the Dao generation will have a hard time. Do you think I'm joking? Daolian dare not. Chen Daolian lowered his head. Chen Daoxuan sighed and said, don't worry, they won't have to work hard for 2 years. The youngest Dao generation monk is already over 6 years old. During this period, they will follow Daochu and learn to refine weapons with me. When the clan school opens in 2 years, this batch of Dao generation monks will be able to work in the Flying Sword Factory. By then, the factory's flying sword production will inevitably increase by a large margin. Chen Daoxuan did not forget that in addition to the 5 Dao generation monks working in the factory, there are 4 younger ones. 2 years later, this batch of young Dao generation monks can also be of great use. As for them entering the factory at the age of just over 8, they do not meet the employment standards in Chen Daoxuan's cognition, so someone has to take care of it. Anyway, his Chen family's 8-year-old children entered the factory. In the final analysis, for the growth of the family, which generation of Chen family monks did not sacrifice? Chen Zion is like this, Chen Daoxuan is like this, and even the future Fu generation monks will also be like this. It is precisely relying on the continuous sacrifices of generations of Chen family monks that the Chen family can grow step by step and take off. Chen Daolian was unwilling to stop working to learn alchemy. She proposed to Chen Daoxuan that she go to the Fijian factory to work for 3 hours every day and spend the rest of the time practicing and learning alchemy. Chen Daoxuan agreed when he saw her firm attitude. At this moment, he finally knew that the Chen family belonged not only to him, but also to every cultivator in the Chen family. Everyone was working hard for the development and growth of the Chen family. If all the clan members were like this, there was no need to worry about the family not prospering. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan couldn't help but smile. He felt more and more that being a clan leader in such a family was a happy and interesting thing. Chapter 115 Material Issues. Time flies. In a blink of an eye, half a year has passed. In the courtyard of the Lingfu, Chen Daoxuan slowly opened his eyes, feeling the Danshan Qi in his body that had almost grown to its limit, and a hint of joy appeared on his face. I finally broke through the 9th level of Qi refining. From the age of 16 to now, it has been more than 3 years. Chen Daoxuan's cultivation level has soared from the 3rd level of Qi refining to the 9th level of Qi refining, almost at the rate of 2 levels a year. This cultivation speed is not inferior to some Xian Lingjin cultivators with slightly worse resources. In the past 6 months, in addition to teaching Chen Daoxuan and a group of Dao generation cultivators to refine weapons all day long, Chen Daoxuan has been teaching Chen Daolian to learn alchemy. Thanks to the ability of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Sutra to store enlightenment, the 2nd level alchemy inheritance that was snatched from the female cultivator of Izumo country has been mastered by Chen Daoxuan. Not only that, in the past 6 months, he has also cultivated a 1st level spell to perfection. The name of this 1st level spell is Windblade. That is the spell carried by the leopard puppet beast that Chen Daoxuan had looted from the Emo family's library. As the most basic 1st level wind attribute spell, the Windblade technique is not powerful among all 1st level spells. The only advantage is that it is fast, with a fast release speed and a fast trajectory of the Windblade after release. As for the power, Chen Daoxuan has tested it. The perfect Windblade technique can't even break the ice technique in his talisman. Not to mention compared with Chen Daoxuan's ultimate move, the wind chasing and rain sword. Of course, Chen Daoxuan chose to practice this 1st level spell not for its power. Instead, He used it to comprehend the wind pattern, which can also be called the law of wind. In the world of immortal cultivation, the cultivators divide spells into 9 types according to their attributes: gold, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, and darkness. In addition to the basic 5 elements spells, spells of the 4 attributes of wind, thunder, light, and darkness are relatively rare. As for ice attribute spells, they are actually variants of water attribute spells. If we count the various attribute spells derived from the 5 element, there are too many types of spells. But no matter what attribute the spell is, if you want to release it, you must comprehend the Dao pattern of this spell. That is what cultivators often call the Dao pattern of spells. Due to the needs of their profession, talisman makers must be proficient in various Dao patterns of spells. Therefore, every talisman maker has a high level of attainment in spells. According to what Zhao Mubei said in the Sword Jade Slip, if a cultivator wants to comprehend the sword meaning, he must integrate the Dao into the sword. And the Dao here refers to the Dao pattern of spells. Chen Daoxuan had rarely practiced spells before, so he couldn't say how proficient he was in the Dao pattern of spells. In fact, he knew a little about the Dao pattern of wind. Because the wind control technique can be classified as a wind attribute spell, it contains a part of the Dao pattern of wind. This is also the reason why Chen Daoxuan chose to practice the wind blade technique first. He has some foundation in this area. Facts have proved that his choice was not wrong. After more than a month of enlightenment, Chen Daoxuan finally practiced the wind blade technique to perfection. Although the power of the spell was mediocre, it at least made his understanding of the wind Dao pattern much deeper than before. Especially after the last epiphany, he actually found that his sword realm, which had been stuck for more than a year, had improved again. Chen Daoxuan found that with the help of epiphany, the wind Dao pattern actually slowly integrated into his sword, allowing his sword level to steadily improve. This discovery made Chen Daoxuan very excited. His progress in swordsmanship was too fast before. So much so that there was no progress in more than a year, which made Chen Daoxuan somewhat self-doubting about his swordsmanship talent. Is it because his swordsmanship talent is too poor, so that the ability of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Sutra to store comprehension cannot help him continue to improve in swordsmanship? But the last epiphany completely dispelled his doubts. It's not that his swordsmanship talent is poor, but that he didn't find the right direction. If it weren't for the guidance of Zhao Mubei's swordsmanship jade slips, Chen Daoxuan didn't know how long it would take to discover this little trick, before he could discover this secret. Whenever he thought of this, he felt more and more grateful to Zhao Mubei. To some extent, Zhao Mubei was like a half-teacher to him. The problem of comprehending the sword intent was solved, and Chen Daoxuan's cultivation had reached the 9th level of key refining. Then what lay before Chen Daoxuan was to build the foundation. Of course, before building the foundation, Chen Daoxuan had to complete 3 things. Because he was going to follow the legendary path of sword cultivation, so his preparations were not too thorough. The first, of course, was to comprehend the sword intent. Chen Daoxuan felt that there was no problem with this. Since he had found the right direction, the rest was to use the ability of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Sutra to store his comprehension. Second, polish the true key, make the true key pure and harmonious, and reach the point where there was no room for improvement. This was the preparation that every cultivator in the key refining stage needed to make. In fact, not only the cultivators in the key refining stage, but in all the realms of cultivation, there was a special realm called the perfect realm. For example, perfect key refining, perfect foundation building, perfect purple mansion, and so on. But in fact, perfection is not a new realm, it refers to the special state that the cultivator has reached to break through to the next realm. Essentially, key refining perfection is key refining level 9. It is just that the key of the key refining level 9 cultivators is round, pure, and has no room for improvement. They are ready to build their foundation. For example, the head of the Mo family killed by Chen Daoxuan was in this special state. To reach this special state from the key refining level 9, it is no longer effective to rely on the power of elixirs. This is the case with Wei Sihei, a key refining level 9 cultivator employed by the Chen family's magical instruments branch. Regardless of whether it is elixirs or water spirit beads that assist in cultivation, they have no effect on this type of cultivator. Because grinding key does not rely on spiritual energy, but on the cultivator's little by little hard work. Depending on the different conditions of the cultivators, it takes a few years at least, and even up to 10 years at most. At this point, Chen Daoxuan realized how amazing it was that Zhao Mubei built his foundation at the age of 21. Because grinding key cannot rely on external objects, it can only rely on the cultivator himself. In other words, Zhao Mubei may have reached the key refining level 9 before he was 15 years old. As for the third thing, it is also the most important, or the thing that Chen Daoxuan is least sure of. To create a life Danshan decompressor, or a true key storage device. In the past 6 months, Chen Daoxuan has put a lot of thought into this aspect. He has read a lot of ancient books and experimented with countless spiritual mineral materials, but he has never been able to find a material that can store true ki. This makes Chen Daoxuan extremely frustrated. After all, finding this material is only the first step. Only by finding this material can he later develop a special life magic tool for storing true ki, based on this material. However, he has not even completed the first step. Si estás escuchando esta novela en canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas. Significa que descargaran y sabiran si nos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas y encontrarás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos géneros. Te esperamos para sumergirte en mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 116 The Invitation from the Mermaids. Young Patriarch. Outside the Lingfu, a group of figures flew towards Chen Daoxuan's courtyard. Upon closer inspection, they were Chen Daochu, Chen Daolian, and the young Daoist monks. Everyone lowered their bodies and saluted Chen Daoxuan respectfully. Seeing this, Chen Daoxuan nodded. Let's get started. After that, he looked at Chen Daolian and said, you go to the alchemy room first, and refine the first level lower grade spiritual elixir key recovering elixir, that I taught you yesterday. Yes, young patriarch. Chen Daolian bowed and saluted. Then he walked towards the alchemy room of the Lingfu. After watching Chen Daolian leave, Chen Daoxuan looked at Chen Daochu and the others and said, have you learned the skills of superimposing array patterns, that I told you yesterday? Soon. Time passed bit by bit as everyone studied hard. Unknowingly, 3 hours passed. When Chen Daochu and the others waved goodbye to Chen Daoxuan, the sky was gradually getting dark. Chen Daoxuan let out a breath. He stood up and stretched his muscles. The sign scales in the storage bag heated up slightly. HMM. Chen Daoxuan took the sign scales out of the storage bag. It was a message from Eluoli. Chen Daoxuan's expression was a little confused. Logically speaking, today was not the day for the mermaids to trade with his Chen family. After thinking about it, Chen Daoxuan sank his consciousness into the sign scales. After half a cup of tea, Chen Daoxuan withdrew his consciousness from the sign scales with a strange look on his face. Invite me to visit the Demon Ape Mountain? Chen Daoxuan frowned, thinking about the meaning of the mermaid's move. But after thinking for a long time, he got nothing. Forget it. Why think so much? Why not ask her in person? Chen Daoxuan laughed and shook his head. After 2 years of trading, his relationship with Eluoli is no longer just an ordinary trading partner. The relationship between the two is much more harmonious than when they first met. Every time they meet, the two sides were able to sit down and chat, just like close friends. Redwood Island. Seaview Pavilion. In the distance, a lonely and frail figure sat on the stone bench of the Seaview Pavilion, which made people feel pity. Eluoli looked at the endless sea and slapped the water with her tail in a bored manner. While slapping, she counted numbers rhythmically in her little mouth. 3020, 3021 Where did I count to? Eluoli looked up blankly, then lowered her head and muttered, forget it, count again. Suddenly, Eluoli looked up and saw a white figure flying from the distant sky. It was Chen Daoxuan. Chen Daoxuan lowered his body, smiled and bowed, saying, sorry, I kept Miss Eluo waiting for a long time. No, I just got here too. Eluoli's pretty face was a little embarrassed. After a moment of silence, Chen Daoxuan asked straight to the point. Miss Luo, you just said in the message that you invited me to visit the noble territory. I wonder what your intention is? No, nothing. It's just that my father wants to see you. Your father? Chen Daoxuan's expression suddenly became serious. Luoli's father is a late-stage purple mansion cultivator. Although he is not Zhao Mubei's opponent, he is also a well-known figure in the entire Guanghan prefecture. To be honest, Chen Daoxuan doesn't really want to see this person. After all, with his cultivation as a key refining cultivator, it is a bit too stressful to meet a foreign purple mansion cultivator. But if this trip will encounter an accident, Chen Daoxuan really can't find any reason for the other party to attack the Chen family. After more than 2 years of trade exchanges, the mermaids are highly dependent on the Chen family in all aspects. It can be said that, if something happens to the Chen family, the mermaids are the most reluctant to see it. Even for the Chen family, the mermaids are willing to take risks to help. You know, if the alien race dares to interfere in the internal affairs of the human race, they will risk extermination. This was something Chen Daoxuan learned later in his communication with Chen Xian. Cunning Sword Sect's suppression of the alien race in Wangxinghe was extremely terrifying. In order to suppress the alien race in Wangxinghe, Cunning Sword Sect specially established an existence called Zhenhe Palace. Zhenhe Palace may not be well known among the human cultivators in Wangxinghe, but in the underwater world of Wangxinghe, it is an organization that can make the alien race tremble with fear. Especially the master of Zhenhe Palace. He is the most powerful one in the entire Wangxinghe, and one of the pillars of the entire Wangxinghe. This also explains why Luoli's father showed obvious fear on his face when he heard about Cunning Sword Sect. In fact, he was not afraid of Cunning Sword Sect, but Zhenhe Palace under Cunning Sword Sect. Seeing the hesitation on Chen Daoxuan's face, Luoli couldn't help showing a trace of nervousness on her pretty face. She was afraid that Chen Daoxuan would refuse, because now she didn't know who else she could go for help. Okay. Chen Daoxuan nodded slowly, and then asked in confusion, but, after all, I'm only at the key refining stage, and I don't know the art of water escape. How can I enter the deep sea world? Hearing this, Luoli smiled and said, have you forgotten the innate magical power I used to send you home last time? You mean? Yes, the innate magical power of our mermaids allows you to go to the underwater world of Wangxinghe without the art of water escape. At this, Luoli smiled mysteriously. Believe me, you will definitely like the deep sea world of Wangxinghe. Chen Daoxuan smiled and said nothing to her. What is the deep sea world like? Although Chen Daoxuan has never been there in this life, he has always seen the pictures taken by submarines in his previous life. It is a cold, dark, and dead world. Only special life can survive in that environment. Luoli said that he would fall in love with the deep sea world of Wangxinghe. Isn't this nonsense? But Chen Daoxuan can understand it. After all, the eyes of the lover are beautiful, and few people will say that their hometown is not good. Maybe in Luoli's eyes, the underwater world of Wangxinghe is like a fairyland. It seems that she can see the indifference in Chen Daoxuan's eyes. Luoli covered her mouth and chuckled, without explaining. That little expression seemed to be waiting to see Chen Daoxuan's joke. For some reason, every time she was with Chen Daoxuan, she would feel a moment of relaxation. Luoli felt that perhaps Chen Daoxuan had helped them too much. So much so that she herself had a faint dependence on Chen Daoxuan. Shall we leave now, or? Chen Daoxuan didn't finish his words. I felt my right hand tightened, and then there was a dizzy spin, and then I fell freely into the sea. Can you say hello next time? Chen Daoxuan said helplessly. Sorry, I was too excited. I must pay attention next time. Luoli smiled and showed a pair of small tiger teeth. Shaking his head, Chen Daoxuan didn't blame him anymore. As the two went deeper and deeper into the sea, the light from above became less and less. In the end, Chen Daoxuan was completely in a dark place. Fortunately, he still had his spiritual sense. His body was covered with a transparent film that fit his skin. He felt neither suffocated nor any pressure from the seawater, which was magical. Without vision, Chen Daoxuan's sense of touch seemed to become particularly sharp. He could feel the warmth emanating from Eluoli's little hand holding his. It was this warmth that made him feel a little more at ease in this dark environment. Gradually, Chen Daoxuan's breathing returned to normal. I don't know how long it took. Eluoli's voice came to Chen Daoxuan's ears again. We are about to enter the dark layer of the Huangxing Sea. Dark layer? Chen Daoxuan asked in a voice transmission, not knowing what he meant. Chapter 117. Do you know why it is called Huangxing He? The underwater world of Huangxing He. It is divided into 3 layers in total: the shallow surface layer, the black curtain layer, and the star-sea layer below the black curtain layer. After passing through these 3 seas, you will enter the real underwater world of Huangxing He. Compared with the shallow surface layer, the black curtain layer is really cold and dark. It is exactly the same as the deep sea world in Chen Daoxuan's previous life. The only difference from the bottom of the sea in his previous life is that the depth of Huangxing He is really too deep. Eluoli, who is in the foundation building period, is so fast. But after diving for a full hour, he didn't even pass through the black curtain layer. This scene made Chen Daoxuan feel a little scared. Originally, he thought that, after he became a cultivator, he would no longer be afraid of the power of nature. But at this moment, when he was in the black curtain layer of Huangxing He, Chen Daoxuan once again realized his insignificance. The so-called cultivator is just a more powerful person. In front of this endless power of heaven and earth, let alone the cultivators in the key refining period, even the foundation building period and the purple mansion period, what are they? It seems that he feels flustered. Chen Daoxuan couldn't help but hold Eluoli's hand. This action made Eluoli's diving figure tremble slightly. But soon, Eluoli, with a blushing face, said nothing and gently held Chen Daoxuan's right hand. Along the way, both of them were silent. Only an inexplicable feeling was brewing between the two. Suddenly, a ray of light appeared in Chen Daoxuan's sight. That is, Chen Daoxuan looked at the dots of stars below, a little at a loss. That is the star-sea layer of Huangxing He. We have passed through the black curtain layer. Eluoli breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. Obviously, every time he passed through the black curtain layer, even for Eluoli who lived in the underwater world of Huangxing He for many years, it was a great psychological pressure. Star-sea layer. Chen Daoxuan felt that his worldview was severely shattered at this moment. The underwater world of Huangxing He was such a magnificent scene. Seeing Chen Daoxuan's shocked look, Eluoli just felt funny. She shook Chen Daoxuan's big hand and said, "Do you know why it is called Huangxing He? Because of it?" Chen Daoxuan pointed to the countless stars below that looked like the vast starry sky and murmured, "Yes, because of it." Eluoli nodded. All along, Chen Daoxuan thought that the reason why Huangxing He was called Huangxing He was because there were as many islands on the sea as the stars in the sky. Unexpectedly, the underwater world of Huangxing He really contains a starry sky. So beautiful. Chen Daoxuan couldn't help but say, "It is very beautiful, but also very dangerous." Eluoli looked at the scene in front of her and responded, "Dangerous?" Chen Daoxuan turned his head, a little confused. Compared to your human world, the underwater world of Huangxing He is extremely cruel. Sometimes, I envy your human world for having the power of cunning and sword sect. Envy? Chen Daoxuan thought about it carefully, and then he understood the meaning of Eluoli's words. For any family cultivator who wants to expand their family, cunning and sword sect is an indelible dark cloud over their heads. But for independent cultivators and small family cultivators, as well as ordinary people living in Huangxing He, cunning and sword sect at least provides them with the most basic survival guarantee. Take Guang'an Prefecture as an example. Even though the Chen family was so weak at the beginning, they did not worry about other families coming to rob their family property. The extermination of the Chen family was due to the deterrence of cunning and sword sect. There is also the existence of Zhenhe Palace. If it were not for Zhenhe Palace suppressing the alien races in the underwater world of Huangxing He, the various races in the sea would not dare to move at all. Every year, the monster beast attacks alone would cause countless casualties to mortal cultivators. The monster beast attacks here do not refer to the monster beast chaos in Changping County that year. The monster beast chaos in Changping County was all monster beasts like tiger eyefish that were not of the rank. This kind of monster beast that was not of the rank is more like a beast than a monster. For this kind of beast, Carnioan Sword Sect has no good way to manage it, because there are too many of them in the Wuxing Sea, and no matter how you kill them, they will not be afraid. Moreover, the reproduction speed of these ungraded monsters is amazing. Carnioan Sword Sect and the major families can only take regular cleaning methods to control the number of these ungraded monsters. As the two continued to dive, Chen Daoxuan finally approached these stars. As he got closer, Chen Daoxuan found that these stars had no entity, like a group of starlight floating in the deep sea world. The big ones among these stars are as bright as the rising sun. The small ones are like dust and can hardly be seen. After counting carefully, Chen Daoxuan found that there are a total of 7 stars as bright as the rising sun. It is these stars that illuminate the entire underwater world as bright as day. Being in the Starsea layer, Chen Daoxuan seemed to have come to a dreamland. And he found that as he got closer and closer to the underwater world, the spiritual energy here seemed to become more and more rich. You said the spiritual energy is rich? Luoli said shyly. That's because we are not proficient in formations, and we can't use formations to block the spiritual energy of the spiritual veins. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan didn't know how to respond. Unexpectedly, the cultivation environment that the Wuxing casual cultivators dreamed of was not on land, but in the deep sea. It's a pity that casual cultivators can never enter the deep sea world to practice. A casual cultivator with low cultivation can't step into this place at all. Even if you have reached the foundation building stage, you can't practice here at all, because you have to maintain the consumption of water escape techniques all the time. If you want to practice in the Wuxing underwater world without being affected too much, human cultivators must at least reach the giant cultivation level. And when you reach the giant cultivation level, not to mention that you can get more and better resources in the battlefield of Izumo country. The high-level spiritual veins in the Wuxing underwater world alone are almost all controlled by powerful alien races. This one makes the giant cultivators stay away, because in order to seize these high-level spiritual veins, you must kill the alien races occupying the spiritual veins. In this way, it is better to go to the battlefield of Chuan Kingdom. At least it is not a single battle. Besides, the underwater world of Wuxing is the base of Carnioan Sword Sect. How can a giant cultivator not even have this kind of vision? More than an hour later, the two finally crossed the vast sea of stars and really came to the underwater world of Wuxing. Luoli stood on a high mountain under the sea. After identifying the direction, he took Chen Daoxuan's hand and flew towards the direction of Moyuan Mountain. Along the way, Luoli avoided the spiritual veins occupied by various alien races with ease. After flying for several hours, the two finally came to the territory of Moyuan Mountain. As a mountain range with a 3rd level spiritual vein, Moyuan Mountain covers a vast area, reaching thousands of miles in radius. On the main vein of Moyuan Mountain, caves were opened up by the members of the mermaid tribe. On another mountain range, a large number of male mermaids were going in and out of the mine. Obviously, they were mining for the Chen family. Looking down, Luoli pointed at the largest cave on the main vein and said, "That's my father's cave." Chapter 118 The Origin of the Mermaids. After coming down, the two flew towards the cave of the leader of the merman tribe. After a while, they landed in front of the cave of Luoli's father. "Let's go." Luoli turned around and smiled at Chen Daoxuan. "Yes." Chen Daoxuan nodded and followed him. "Dad, look, who did I invite?" Luoli said happily as soon as he entered the cave. Chen Daoxuan looked around at the furnishings in the cave. Compared with the caves of human cultivators, the caves of the merman tribe seemed to have a different style. Above the cave, it was dotted with large and small water spirit beads, which looked like the top of the starry sky. Chen Daoxuan met the leader of the merman tribe for the second time in the hall of the cave. Compared with the first time he met him, the leader of the merman tribe did not seem to be in a good condition at the moment. Luoziuan raised his head, his face pale, wrapped in a layer of loose brocade clothes. He seemed a little weak from the outside. "You're here." Luoziuan's voice was terribly hoarse, as if he had only one breath left. But Chen Daoxuan knew that, even if the other party was seriously injured, as a late Purple Mansion cultivator, he could never guess. "Senior, what are you doing?" Eluoziuan looked up at Eluoli, waved his hand and said, "Leah, you go out first." "Yes, Dad." Eluoli's eyes revealed a trace of reluctance. She was very worried about her father's injury, but she had no good way. According to the illustrations provided by Chen Daoxuan, she found a lot of spiritual medicines for treating injuries on the seabed, but none of them worked on her father's injury. Watching Eluoli leave, Eluoziuan looked at Chen Daoxuan with deep eyes and said, "Boy, we meet again." Chen Daoxuan arched his hands and said nothing. Eluoziuan tore off his wide robe and said to himself, "As you can see, I won't live long." Only to see the wound on Eluoziuan's chest caused by Zhao Mubei not only did not heal, but became more serious. The terrifying sword energy hovered over the gap in Eluoziuan's chest. Moreover, Chen Daoxuan also saw that this sword energy, while resisting Eluoziuan's mana, was also consuming the opponent's mana and growing stronger. This caused Eluoziuan to be unable to erase this sword energy at all. More than 3 years of entanglement. Eluoziuan was almost exhausted. 3 years ago, in order to attack the Demon Ape Mountain, it completely lost control, and the result became like this. Eluoziuan smiled self-deprecatingly and put on his robe again. "Do you know why I want to see you?" "Junior doesn't know. Please tell me clearly." Chen Daoxuan bowed. As for Eluoziuan's injury, he, who had received Zhao Mubei's sword inheritance, knew it better than Eluoziuan himself. This was the damage left by the sword intent. This kind of injury is extremely difficult to heal, unless the sword cultivator uses his sword intent to erase this sword energy, or the giant cultivator uses more advanced mana to erase it bit by bit. Otherwise, if the sword energy is not removed, even if the wound is cured by taking the elixir, the body will continue to be damaged by the sword energy. This is also the terrifying part of sword cultivation. In the past 3 years, our two tribes have traded frequently. Whether it is our weapons, spiritual rice or even the clothes worn by our people, they all rely on your Chen family to supply them. Eluoziuan paused. What's even more ridiculous is that our tribe actually use the contribution points of your Chen family. Boy, are you planning to take our tribe under your command and become a vassal of your Chen family? Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan's heart tightened, but there was no fear on his face. He said righteously, "What do you mean, senior? The trade between our two tribes is all for the benefit of each other. If the senior feels that it is inappropriate to use the contribution points of my Chen family, you can exchange them for spiritual stones. Don't rush to quibble. You and I know the facts." Eluoziuan sighed. "Let me ask you, do you really like our mermaid tribe?" Chen Daoxuan didn't know what the other party meant by this, and fell silent for a while. Seeing Chen Daoxuan was silent, Eluoziuan's eyes became vague. "Do you know why I didn't trade with the Yang family or the Wu family, but chose a small family like your Chen family?" "I don't know." Chen Daoxuan shook his head. He has always been very confused about this matter. On the surface, whether the mermaids cooperate with the Yang family or the Wu family, it is better than cooperating with his Chen family. After all, the strength of the Yang, Wu, and Zhao families is much stronger than that of the Chen family. Because these families have their own vassal races, and we mermaids don't want to become vassals of others. Eluoziuan said faintly. Vassal race? This was the first time he heard the secret of the big family in Guang'an Prefecture, and he couldn't help but be very curious for a while. That's right. Such as the Purple Lightning Snapping Turtle clan of the Yang family and the Green Water Ape clan of the Wu family, they are all their vassal races. The Zhao family also has a vassal race, which is said to be a Jiandan race, but I don't know which race it is. Eluoziuan said, shaking his head. Vassal race, called vassal, is actually a dog raised by the major families. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan's heart was in turmoil. He knew that the Wangxing Hazyuxan clan had a deep foundation, but he didn't expect it to be so deep. In addition to the strength of his own clan members, they also have interest tentacles in the underwater world of Wangxing He. In fact, think about it carefully. No one in this world is a fool, especially these big families. What the Chen family can think of, how can other families not think of it? Besides, trading with alien races can reap a lot of wealth in the underwater world of Wangxing He. It would be strange if the major Xiuxin families did not intervene. As for the fact that the Chen family had no idea before, it was because the Chen family could not reach this level at all. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan said again, since you mermaids have been captured by the Zhao family, why don't you choose to become their vassal? This is at least better than being slaves of the Zhao family. Who knows to hear this? Luo Xiuan said faintly, slaves are still the same race after all, but vassals are not. I don't know what you mean by this, senior. Chen Daoxuan frowned, very puzzled. Luo Xiuan did not answer this question, but asked, do you know the origin of my mermaids? Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan shook his head. Although it was rumored that the mermaids were a branch of the ancient human race, how could he say such an unconfirmed rumor? At least on the surface, the racial characteristics of the human race and the mermaids are obvious. One has legs and the other has a fishtail. In ancient times, monsters were the overlords of this world, and humans were just food for monsters. At that time, in order to survive, the human race had a huge disagreement. One side advocated fighting the monsters to the end, while the other side advocated fleeing to the deep sea to survive. Countless years have passed. The human race that chose to fight the monsters to the end defeated the monsters and became the master of this world. The human race that chose to flee to the deep sea gradually lost its human characteristics and grew a fishtail. But they found that there were countless monsters in the deep sea world, and as the human race on land won, more and more monster races fled to the deep sea, making it difficult for this human race to reproduce, and the race became smaller and smaller. Speaking of this, Luo Xiuan raised his head. Yes, this ancient human branch is the ancestor of our mermaids. You and I are of the same race and origin. Who knew that? Chen Daoxuan's expression did not change at all when he heard this, but instead glanced at the other's fishtail. As if stimulated by Chen Daoxuan's eyes, Luo Xiuan suddenly became excited. Yes, we did escape back then. But our ancestors just wanted to survive, just wanted to keep a trace of blood for the human race. Our ancestors just wanted to live, just didn't want to die. What did we do wrong? Cough cough cough. As he said this, Luo Xiuan coughed violently. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan said nothing, just looked at him indifferently. That expression definitely didn't look like he was looking at a fellow tribesman. His cold attitude completely tore the deepest scar in Luo Xiuan's heart, making him a late purple mansion cultivator, sad and heartbroken. Different choices have created different racial destinies. Two human races, one side became the master of this world. On the other side, even the most basic reproduction and survival has become an extremely difficult thing. But the side that has become the master of the world no longer believes that the mermaids are a branch of the human race with the same origin as them. Luo Xiuan thought of the time when he went to attack Guanghan Prefecture. The way those casual cultivators looked at him was as if they had seen some new monster, full of teasing. At this moment of approaching death, Luo Xiuan couldn't help but feel sad. If their ancestors had not chosen to flee to the deep sea, but chose to fight side by side with the human race on land, how great it would be. After a long while, Luo Xiuan calmed down, raised his head and said, we, the mermaids, are willing to become vassals of your Chen family. Why? Chen Daoxuan was very puzzled. Although the Chen family is thriving now, there are so many big families in Guanghan Prefecture, and any one of them is better than the Chen family. Luo Xiuan's eyes dimmed because of Luo. Miss Luo? Chen Daoxuan frowned, even more puzzled. Because she told me that you are the only one who doesn't look at her like a monster. Luo Xiuan emphasized again, we are not monsters, nor are we aliens, we are human. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan took a deep breath and nodded. Okay. On behalf of the Chen family, I accept the loyalty of your mermaids. Getting the loyalty of the mermaids has always been Chen Daoxuan's dream. But for some reason, he didn't feel the slightest bit of excitement at this moment. There was just a hint of sadness. Sometimes, if you take a wrong step, you will never recover. Luo Xiuan straightened his body, then knelt in front of Chen Daoxuan, and made a contract. I, Luo Xiuan, the leader of the mermaids, swear here on behalf of all my mermaids that from today on, I will be loyal to the Chen family until I die. I, Chen Daoxuan, the leader of the Chen family, accept the loyalty of the mermaids on behalf of my Chen family. In midair, an invisible contract was formed between the two. The contract of racial subordination. At this moment, he felt that he had a slight sense of each member of the merman tribe. Although this sense could not do anything to the merman tribe, it could detect whether the other party was loyal to him. This was the effect of the racial subordination contract. Watching Chen Daoxuan leave his cave, Luoziuan sighed silently. Leah, I hope that dad's choice this time is not wrong. Chapter 119. Lotus of Creation. Demonate Mountains. Following the induction of the subsidiary contract, Chen Daoxuan quickly found Luoli's location. Far away, Luoli was lying on a hilltop covered with vegetation and seaweed, her white and tender hands crossed, resting on the back of her head, staring at the huge stars in the sea of stars, in a daze. What are you thinking about? Silently, Chen Daoxuan sat beside her. When I was a child, I often lay on the rocks to look at the stars. At that time, I asked my mother why our tribesmen were always fleeing and fighting. My mother told me that it was for survival. A line of clear tears slid down her cheeks. I asked my mother what the meaning of survival was. She told me that, just like she gave birth to me, I would give birth to a younger me in the future, and this would be the meaning of survival from generation to generation. Later, my mother was gone. At this point, Luoli burst into tears. Chen Daoxuan looked at her, hesitated, and finally put his hand gently on her shoulder, comforting her. Everything will pass. The human race survived such a difficult time in ancient times. I believe that you mermaids will also usher in a bright day. Hearing this, Luoli raised her head, staring at Chen Daoxuan's eyes with a pair of slightly red eyes, and said, will he die? Yes. Chen Daoxuan nodded, then looked at the starry sky. Everyone will die. These words seemed to comfort Luoli, and seemed to comfort himself. I don't know how long I cried. Luoli was tired of crying, and actually fell asleep in Chen Daoxuan's arms. Looking at her tearful appearance, Chen Daoxuan felt a hint of pity in his heart. Although the Chen family is struggling, but little do they know that the life of the Chen family is what the mermaids living in the deep sea world dream of. An hour later, Luoli woke up faintly, finding herself lying in Chen Daoxuan's arms. Her pretty face couldn't help but blush slightly, but then she thought of something, and her face turned pale again. As a signatory race of the subordinate contract, Luoli could feel the vague connection between her and Chen Daoxuan. Master. She shouted the word awkwardly. Chen Daoxuan shook his head. No need to do that. Just call me by my name. Who knew that Luoli's face was unusually firm? Shaking her head, she said, etiquette cannot be abolished, and rules cannot be broken. Since my mermaid race is a subordinate race of the Chen family, from today on, you are my master. However, before that, I want to be unrestrained one last time. As she said that, she looked at Chen Daoxuan with a hint of expectation. Okay. Although he didn't know what Luoli meant by unrestrained, he really couldn't bear to reject this girl with a tragic fate. Seeing that Chen Daoxuan didn't reject her, Luoli happily grabbed Chen Daoxuan's right hand and flew in one direction. Come with me. Seeing her in such a hurry, Chen Daoxuan laughed dumbly. It was really a temper that could not be changed, no matter what he said. Slow down. Okay, just in front. After a while, the two came to a huge basin in the Demonate Mountain. This is equivalent to the plane of the underwater world. On this plane, there are actually many strange lotus flowers. These lotus flowers are white in appearance. Under the shining of the stars, they glow with a strange brilliance, and are very beautiful. Even Chen Daoxuan had to sigh that this beautiful scenery was rare. Seeing Chen Daoxuan was shocked by the beautiful scenery in front of him, Luoli laughed and said, this is a spiritual plant unique to the underwater world of Wangxinghai. We call it the lotus of good fortune. Unfortunately, it is not the spiritual medicine in the illustration you gave me. At this point, Luoli's pretty face showed a trace of regret. Spiritual plant? Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan's heart moved slightly. Any undiscovered spiritual plant has a huge effect. The only difference is whether this effect has been developed by the cultivator. This is a sentence recorded in the alchemy inheritance left by the female cultivator of Chuan country. Chen Daoxuan deeply agrees. There are no useless spiritual plants, only spiritual plants that have not found a specific use. It's obviously a white lotus. Why is it called the lotus of creation? Chen Daoxuan looked at Eluoli with a strange expression and asked. Just watch. Eluoli smiled mysteriously. The next moment, she suddenly flew to the center of the lotus sea, held up a stream of true energy in her right hand, and then threw it into the air. Suddenly, countless fine true energy scattered towards the lotus on the ground. After the white lotus of creation came into contact with Eluoli's true energy, it immediately emitted a different kind of brilliance. For a moment, various colors of brilliance filled the air, reflecting the starlight under the starry sky, making Eluoli look like a goddess under the moon. Looking at this beautiful scene, Chen Daoxuan felt that his heart was deeply touched. Under the starry sky, the two looked at each other silently, and Eluoli didn't say that sentence after all. So beautiful. Chen Daoxuan sighed. What did you say? I said it's so beautiful. Eluoli smiled happily, like a child. Just as Eluoli was exerting his true essence, Chen Daoxuan discovered something different about the Lotus of Fortune. Chen Daoxuan discovered that the Lotus of Fortune was actually absorbing Eluoli's true essence. This discovery immediately made Chen Daoxuan feel ecstatic. What's wrong with you? Seeing Chen Daoxuan's face change from a smile to ecstasy, Eluoli stopped what he was doing and flew towards Chen Daoxuan. As Eluoli stopped exerting his true essence, the Lotus of Fortune did not immediately lose its luster, but still looked radiant. It's okay. Chen Daoxuan stared at one of the lotuses of fortune and observed it carefully. Eluoli, let me ask you, can this lotus of fortune absorb your true essence? Yes. Unfortunately, this spiritual plant has no other function except absorbing the true essence of the cultivator. The true essence absorbed by it will be stored for a period of time and then slowly absorbed by itself and turned into nutrients for growth. Eluoli said as a matter of course. It has no effect at all. Hearing Eluoli's evaluation, the corners of Chen Daoxuan's mouth twitched fiercely. Eluoli actually said that this thing is useless. Taking a deep breath, Chen Daoxuan calmed down his excitement. Then he pulled hard at a lotus of good fortune. What surprised Chen Daoxuan was that this lotus of good fortune was not pulled out by him. You know, in addition to being a cultivator in the key refining stage, Chen Daoxuan also practiced the body refining technique. He has the terrifying power to crush the Kanglan with one foot. Now he can't even pull out a lotus. Seeing this, Chen Daoxuan became more interested in this spiritual plant. He took out the Fixu sword and cut off the lotus of good fortune with one sword. Holding this lotus of good fortune in his hand, Chen Daoxuan found that it had not yet returned to its original white color. Every time you inject true energy into it, how long will it take for the true energy to dissipate? Eluoli shook her head and said, it won't dissipate, it will only be absorbed by it. What if I don't let it absorb it? Chen Daoxuan's voice was faintly trembling. Eluoli tilted her little head and said timidly, then it will stay. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan took Eluoli into his arms, facing her confused little face, and kissed her pretty face fiercely, and said excitedly, I really love you to death. Chapter 120, Creating a Lifetime Magical Instrument. Miss Eluo, walk slowly. Chen Daoxuan waved to Eluoli, but she jumped into the sea without paying any attention to him. He retracted his right hand awkwardly. Chen Daoxuan knew that he had just acted like a hooligan and Eluoli was angry with him. His previous action in the underwater world, let alone in this relatively conservative world, even in his previous life, would have been enough to put him in jail for 7 days. Getting carried away. Chen Daoxuan finally understood the meaning of this word. However, when he thought of the pile of fortune lotus in his storage bag, he couldn't care about anything else. After distinguishing the direction, Chen Daoxuan flew towards Shuanghu Island. When Chen Daoxuan returned to Shuanghu Island again, it was already late at night. He flew back to his spiritual palace alone. He came to his exclusive refining room. Chen Daoxuan couldn't wait to take out the fortune lotus in his storage bag. In the underwater world before, Chen Daoxuan didn't have time to observe carefully. Now after returning to Shuanghu Island, Chen Daoxuan found that there were some stars on the white lotus of fortune. Seeing these stars, Chen Daoxuan couldn't help but think of the starry sea layer of the Wangxinghe underwater world. The magnificent and unusual underwater starry sky made Chen Daoxuan feel extremely shocked. Throwing out the distracting thoughts in his mind, Chen Daoxuan picked up a lotus of fortune. The Danshan decompressor he envisioned must be made according to the method of the natal magic weapon. Compared with ordinary magic weapons, making a natal magic weapon only has an additional special step of fusing the owner's essence and blood. As long as this special step is completed, there is not much difference between ordinary magic weapons and natal magic weapons. Of course, fusing essence and blood is not an easy task. The magic weapon must be adjusted according to the specific situation of the owner of the magic weapon, to adapt to the fusion of essence and blood. Therefore, the refiner who creates the natal magic weapon must know everything about the owner of the natal magic weapon. As a refiner, Chen Daoxuan can easily make a natal magic weapon for himself. Now the main materials for refining the Danshan decompressor have been found. What remained was how to design this magical instrument. Chen Daoxuan, who had already created the magical instrument, the soul melting furnace, was not completely inexperienced in this matter. He immediately injected a stream of true ki into the lotus of creation. The next second, as the true ki was injected, the starlight on the lotus of creation became particularly bright. The more true ki was injected, the brighter the light emitted by the lotus of creation. But no matter how much Chen Daoxuan injected, this lotus of creation was like a bottomless container, accepting all of Chen Daoxuan's true ki. Chen Daoxuan knew that this spiritual plant must have a capacity limit. However, with the total amount of true ki in his current sea of ki, it was far from the capacity limit of the lotus of creation. At this time, Chen Daoxuan thought of another problem. When he was building his foundation, the true ki tempered by the sword intent would be transformed into true essence, and the quality would definitely be very high, even comparable to the sword essence of the foundation building period. So how could Chen Daoxuan be sure that the Danshan decompressor he created could accommodate so much true ki or true essence? This is no joke. If the capacity limit of this Danshan decompressor cannot be tested, he will face great risks when he builds his foundation. After thinking about it, he must find a foundation building cultivator to serve as a tool for him to test the specific capacity limit of this magic weapon. For some reason, the person who flashed in his mind was not a foundation building cultivator of the human race, but Eluoli. Eluoli is not only a foundation building cultivator, but also a late stage foundation building cultivator. It can be said that she is very talented. In Eluoziuan's words, his daughter was born in the mermaid race and was delayed. Otherwise, she might have been a purple mansion cultivator now. But he just offended someone, and now he has to ask for help. Chen Daoxuan always felt a little embarrassed. Forget it, let's build this magic weapon first, and then talk about testing its performance. Chen Daoxuan shook his head and said. His consciousness sank into the sea of consciousness. 10 stardusts kept rotating around the golden scripture. Chen Daoxuan took a deep breath, and collided and fused the 10 stardusts together. The next moment, the familiar epiphany came again. After an incense stick, when Chen Daoxuan opened his eyes again, he had a certain degree of confidence in creating the Danshan decompressor. He took out a lotus of good fortune. He used his true ki to engrave array patterns on its surface. As the array patterns were engraved, the spiritual charm on the lotus of good fortune continued to flow with the array patterns. 1 layer of array patterns, 2 layers of array patterns, 3 layers of array patterns. The array patterns were superimposed on the 3rd layer. The spiritual charm on the lotus of good fortune collapsed instantly. Failed. Chen Daoxuan looked at the lotus of good fortune that he had refined, and was a little headache. This control array is simply too difficult to set up. You have to control the absorption of true ki by the lotus of good fortune, and let it feed back to the owner. You also have to control it from completely absorbing the true ki as its own nutrients. Finally, it has to be superimposed on other array patterns. Rubbing his swollen head, Chen Daoxuan tried again. With failures again and again, the lotus of good fortune in front of him became fewer and fewer. 10 days, 20 days, a month passed by. Immersed in his research, Chen Daoxuan could not notice the passage of time. Even when Chen Daoxuan returned to the family to get the flying sword, he did not even bother to say hello to him. Half a year later, in the weapon refining room, Chen Daoxuan stared at the lotus of good fortune in front of him. This was the third time he had taken the lotus of good fortune from Eluoli. The 3 storage bags of lotus of good fortune turned into waste in his experiment. But after such a long time, countless experiments, adjustments, and enlightenment, Chen Daoxuan finally finalized the array patent of this magic weapon. This scene, if other second level weapon refiners saw it, they would be shocked. Because everyone followed the refining techniques and the weapon refining inheritance to refine the weapon step by step, and Chen Daoxuan directly jumped to the step of creating a new magic weapon. Generally speaking, the weapon refiners who can create new magic weapons are all masters with extremely high levels of weapon refining. Moreover, even a master level weapon refiner like this could not easily create a magic weapon in half a year. Every magic weapon created must be accompanied by decades or even a lifetime of hard work by a weapon refiner. How could someone like Chen Daoxuan create a magic weapon in half a year? And it was a magic weapon that defied the heavens, such as the Danshan pressure reducing device. Chen Daoxuan knew very well what this magic weapon meant. Not only could he challenge the legendary sword cultivator, but it also meant that the children of the Chen family would no longer have any problems in building their foundation in the future. As long as the children of the Chen family reached the perfect cultivation of key refining before the age of 60, they could all successfully build their foundation. And if they reached the perfect cultivation of key refining before the age of 60, even the lower spiritual root cultivators who enjoyed the basic resources of the Chen family would have no problem. Chapter 121 Don't be afraid. In the weapon refining room, Chen Daoxuan looked at the Danshan decompressor he had made with great difficulty, and his sense of accomplishment was overwhelming. This Danshan decompressor made of the lotus of fortune as the main material is not a natal magic weapon, but an ordinary magic weapon. In other words, this is the experimental product Chen Daoxuan used for experiments. Since the natal magic weapon can only be used by the owner himself, it naturally cannot be used for experiments. As long as the experiment of the Danshan decompressor in front of him is successful, Chen Daoxuan can make a natal Danshan decompressor in the way of making a natal magic weapon. By then, Chen Daoxuan can boldly comprehend the sword meaning, temper the true key, and impact the legendary sword cultivator. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan's fatigue from studying magic weapons for half a year was swept away, and the whole person was full of fighting spirit. Redwood Island, Wanghei Pavilion. Chen Daoxuan smiled and took out the Danshan decompressor he made and handed it to Eluoli. Chen Daoxuan, is this what you said last time that you wanted me to experiment with? Half a year has passed. The little grudge between him and Eluoli had long been wiped out by Chen Daoxuan's persuasion. Now he and Eluoli have restored their previous relationship. No. To be precise, it is still a little different from the past. For example, Eluoli no longer mentioned calling him master. Every time he just called him by his name. Yes. Chen Daoxuan smiled and nodded. You just need to inject true energy into it. Eluoli took the magic weapon that looked like the lotus of creation from his hand, tilted her head and said, at what speed should I inject true energy into it? Well. Chen Daoxuan thought for a while and said, forget it, come home with me. Ah. Eluoli was a little caught off guard by Chen Daoxuan's words. But Chen Daoxuan didn't care so much, took her hand, and flew towards Shuanghu Island. In order to worry about being seen by the mortals of the family, Chen Daoxuan also slapped an invisibility talisman on Eluoli's body. It won't take long. Eluoli landed in the courtyard of Chen Daoxuan's spiritual palace. Seeing the spiritual pond in the courtyard, Eluoli's eyes lit up, and with a splash, she dived into the spiritual pond. Don't play for now, help me test this magic weapon first. Chen Daoxuan looked at Eluoli swimming happily in the spiritual pond and said speechlessly, splash. Eluoli got out of the spiritual pond and said, okay, give me the magic weapon. Chen Daoxuan threw the magic weapon to her and instructed, you inject the true essence according to my instructions. For the first time, use half of your speed to inject the true essence into this magic weapon. Don't stop until I tell you to stop. Got it? Luoli nodded and then looked at the lotus-shaped magic weapon in her hand with a serious face. Take a deep breath and infuse the true essence in your body into the magic weapon in front of you. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. About an hour later, Luoli's pretty face was covered with fine beads of sweat, and the lotus-shaped magic weapon in front of her also emitted a red color, as if it would melt at any time. Okay, stop, Chen Daoxuan shouted. Hearing this shout, Luoli stopped instantly. How is it? How much true energy do you have left in your body now? Luoli carefully sensed the Danshan Qi and replied, about less than 30% of the true energy. Less than 30%, Chen Daoxuan murmured, counting that you are in the Lington. You are constantly recovering your true energy, that is to say, the true energy you injected into this magic weapon is as much as 90% of the true energy in your Danshan Qi. At this point, Chen Daoxuan's tone revealed a hint of excitement. After thinking carefully, he continued, otherwise, you can stay at my place for a few days? Ah. Luoli blushed when she heard this request, and she was a little at a loss. It's like this. The next experiment may be a little dangerous, so I decided to make you a life spirit armor first, to ensure your safety. As he said that, Chen Daoxuan looked at Luoli with a burning look in his eyes. It was as if he had set his eyes on an excellent research subject. What do you want to do? Seeing Chen Daoxuan's burning eyes, Luoli was obviously one realm higher than him, but for some reason, he felt a little scared. Don't be afraid, I'm just a cultivator of the 9th level of Qi refining. Are you still worried that I will harm you, a cultivator in the late stage of foundation establishment? Who is afraid? Luoli said stubbornly. It's good that you are not afraid. Chen Daoxuan raised a smile at the corner of his mouth. 3 days later, Luoli put on the life spirit armor that Chen Daoxuan had made for her, looked at Chen Daoxuan and said, tell me, what are you going to do today? Today we will continue the experiment from last time, and inject the true energy into this magic weapon at the same speed as last time. Okay. Luoli, wearing the life spirit armor, took a deep breath, and injected the true energy into the lotus-shaped magic weapon. An hour and a half later, the lotus-shaped magic weapon in front of him was almost as bright as day, but it just didn't explode. Chen Daoxuan suddenly felt that this thing was indeed a 2nd level low-grade magic weapon. It couldn't even fill it with the true energy of a late-stage foundation building cultivator. If it was upgraded to a 2nd level high-grade or even a 3rd level magic weapon, wouldn't it be against the will of heaven? Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan continued to order, you restore your true energy first, and we'll continue later. Okay. Luoli, wearing the spirit armor, didn't say a word, and went directly into the spirit pond, to restore her true energy. About 4 or 5 hours later, after recovering his true essence, Luoli continued to repeat the experiment. He repeated this 3 times. This lotus-shaped magic weapon already stored 3 times the true essence of a late-stage foundation building cultivator. Okay. Stop. Chen Daoxuan felt that there was no need to continue this experiment. 3 times the true essence of a late-stage foundation building cultivator, although Luoli's cultivation was different from that of a human cultivator. But no matter how big the difference was, it was at least equivalent to 3 times the true essence of a human cultivator in the middle stage of foundation building. Luoli seemed not to have heard Chen Daoxuan's order this time, and the speed of retracting his true essence was a little slower. The next moment, a ball of colorless fire ignited on the lotus-shaped magic weapon, and then a beam of light shot up into the sky. The shock wave brought by the beam of light directly sent Luoli, who was closest to him, flying away. Chen Daoxuan summoned his life spirit armor immediately. In addition, he was standing far away, so he was not affected too much. The beam of light that shot up into the sky stopped after 3 full breaths. Ahem. Chen Daoxuan got up from the ground in a panic. Compared to him, Luoli was in an even more miserable state. Fortunately, he was protected by his spiritual armor, and the beam of light just now was directed to the sky, so Luoli was not hurt. Seeing this, Chen Daoxuan breathed a sigh of relief. However, this courtyard was almost completely destroyed. Fortunately, all the young maids of the Chen family in the spiritual mansion were sent home today, otherwise it would have caused a lot of casualties. Are you okay? I'm fine. Luoli quickly flew up, but the panic in his eyes could not be concealed. I'm glad you're okay. Don't be afraid. Let's move on to the next experiment. After saying that, regardless of Luoli's horrified eyes, Chen Daoxuan took out a lotus-shaped magic weapon from the storage bag again. Chapter 122, Second Rank Creation White Lotus. Chuanghu Island Port. Chen Daoxuan was a little embarrassed when he saw Luoli fleeing back to the sea without looking back. Seeing her like this, it would be impossible to find her to do similar experiments next time. However, the Danshan decompressor was finally successfully refined. Chen Daoxuan looked at the lotus-shaped magic weapon in his hand, and he was immediately excited. According to this experiment, Chen Daoxuan's test results showed that this second-level low-grade magic weapon could store up to 3 times the true essence of a cultivator in the late stage of foundation building. Moreover, Luoli injected true essence into it at her fastest speed, and it did not cause any effect on it. So, as long as this lotus-shaped magic weapon is refined into a life magic weapon, it will definitely solve the pressure problem of the expansion of the Danshan Ki Si during foundation building. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan couldn't wait to fly back to his own spiritual palace. In a moment, Chen Daoxuan, flying in the sky, took a look at the devastated courtyard of the spiritual palace. He shook his head and flew towards the direction of the refining room. Entered the refining room. Chen Daoxuan took out a second-grade top-grade fortune lotus. After taking a deep breath, he began to concentrate on refining his second life-defining magic weapon. Time passed little by little during the process of refining the magic weapon. In a blink of an eye, 3 days passed. On a white lotus, countless mysterious and unusual array patterns mixed with Chen Daoxuan's blood essence slowly merged into the lotus. After a while, both of them were completely integrated into the white lotus. Only this white lotus with a bright spiritual light on the surface was left, slowly rotating in the air. It's done. Looking at the white lotus floating in front of him, Chen Daoxuan was very excited. Seriously speaking, this is the second magic weapon he created. To some extent, the significance of this magic weapon is by no means inferior to the Wrangling Furnace. If the Wrangling Furnace gave the Chen family cultivators a shortcut to obtain a large number of cultivation resources, then this Danshan decompression magic weapon gave all the Chen family cultivators hope to build their foundation. You know, the breakthrough of a cultivator in a great realm does not depend on his spiritual roots, which is the only fair part of the cultivator's cultivation. In other words, there is no essential difference between a cultivator with low spiritual roots and a cultivator with high spiritual roots when they break through the foundation. Spiritual roots are only related to the speed of normal cultivation. In this way, a treasure that can increase the probability of a cultivator's foundation building becomes very important. In general, in order to ensure that the elite children of a large family are foolproof when building their foundation, in addition to preparing foundation building pills for them, other treasures to assist in building the foundation will also be prepared to ensure that the elite children of the family will succeed in building their foundation 100%. However, this treatment is simply not universal. You know, the price of a foundation building pill is as high as 40,000 to 50,000 spiritual stones. If it is to make up for the last 10% or 20% of the probability of building a foundation, the cost will even be nearly 10 times higher than this, reaching hundreds of thousands of spiritual stones. Such a terrifying price is only used by the most elite family children like Zhao Mubei. For other ordinary clan members, it is good enough to get a foundation building pill. However, big families are stronger than small families, because their foundation building pills can not only be purchased at internal prices, but also can be purchased by borrowing spirit stones from the family. With a slight movement of his consciousness, the white lotus-shaped magic weapon turned into a spiritual light and rushed straight to Chen Daoxuan's Danshan Ki Si. The next moment, Chen Daoxuan sank his consciousness into the Danshan. He found that in the Danshan Ki Si, a small spiritual armor and a white lotus were circling in the center of the Ki Si. Among them, the white lotus was located in the center above the Ki Si, and the spiritual armor was rotating around the white lotus. It seemed that the two got along very well. In the Ki Si, a trace of true Ki floated around the white lotus, like white mist. However, without Chen Daoxuan's order, the white lotus did not actively absorb the true Ki. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxuan was very satisfied. This lotus of good fortune was finally refined by him into a qualified lifelong magic weapon. Absorbing and feeding back the true ki all require the master's active command, and will not actively absorb the true ki in true essence like before. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan immediately injected his true energy into the white lotus artifact. Due to the use of a second grade upper grade lotus of good fortune, the grade of this white lotus shaped artifact refined by Chen Daoxuan actually reached the second grade middle grade. It was one grade higher than the artifact he experimented with. Chen Daoxuan knew that this was because his skills in refining artifacts were not good enough, and the array pattern he created for this life-defining artifact was not advanced enough. As a result, the artifact grade did not reach the second grade upper grade. But no matter what, a second grade middle grade life definition artifact was also the most valuable artifact in Chen Daoxuan's hands. Under Chen Daoxuan's order, the white lotus frantically absorbed the true energy in Chen Daoxuan's Danshan Qi. It took less than a cup of tea, and the true energy in Chen Daoxuan's Danshan Qi was almost completely absorbed by the white lotus. Looking at the Danshan Qi that was hollowed out by the thief, Chen Daoxuan's slightly pale face suddenly showed excitement. Next, we will try to feed the ki back to the Danshan Qi. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan gave the white lotus another order. The next second, a large amount of ki rushed to the Danshan Qi, and in a moment, the Danshan Qi became full again. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxuan was so excited that he was speechless. This lifelong magic weapon, in addition to acting as a Danshan decompressor when breaking through the foundation, has another important function. That is to store ki and improve the endurance of the cultivator in battle. Imagine if every cultivator of the Chen family had such a magic weapon. During the battle, others thought that the Chen family cultivator's ki was exhausted, but the Chen family cultivator suddenly gave the opponent a fierce blow. What kind of picture would it be? Looking at the white lotus that kept spinning in the Danshan, Chen Daoxuan became more and more satisfied. For this magic weapon, he spent a total of more than a year, and most of the opportunities for enlightenment were thrown on this magic weapon. Even his own sword practice, as well as teaching Chen Daochu, Chen Daolian and others to refine weapons and make pills were delayed. But everyone also knew that Chen Daoxuan was busy with a very important matter. According to the foundation taught by Chen Daoxuan, they all taught themselves the knowledge of refining weapons and alchemy. Especially Chen Daochu. After nearly 2 years of learning to refine weapons, his level of refining weapons was much higher than that of the younger Dao generation monks. So, he actually served as the refining teacher of these young Dao generation monks, and experienced the feeling of being a teacher in advance. In the refining room, Chen Daoxuan stood up. He stretched his muscles and bones, and a bright smile appeared on his face. What name should I give you? Chen Dao looked at the white magic weapon in his Danshan, and pondered for a moment. The 3 layers of lotus are the first grade, but you have 6 layers, which means it is a second grade. I will call you the second grade creation white lotus. Si estas escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas. Significa que descargan y sabiran sinas fuso ten invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas ali encontrarás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos géneros. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 123 Changping No. 1 Immortal Cultivation Primary School. With excitement, Chen Daoxuan walked out of the weapon refining room. On the way, he saw a group of craftsmen repairing the courtyard destroyed by his experiment. After thinking for a while, he walked towards the group of craftsmen. After these years of being in charge of the family, both the mortals and the cultivators in the family were impressed by him, the young patriarch of the Chen family. Seeing Chen Daoxuan, everyone was ready to kneel down and salute him. Greetings, young patriarch. No need to be polite. After the words fell, before everyone knelt down, they were lifted up by a gentle breeze and stood up straight involuntarily. Facing the patriarch, the immortal master, everyone was both respectful and fearful. After bowing and saluting, they all stood there stiffly, at a loss. Let me ask you, where is your commander Chen Biwang? At this time, a man in his 30s, stood up and said boldly, Master Chen has been busy building the clan school. He should be on the construction site of the clan school. Okay, you guys keep busy. Yes, young clan leader. Seeing everyone bowing and responding, Chen Daoxuan flew towards the clan school. The Chen clan school, also known as the first Zeuxan primary school in Changping, has taken more than 2 years to build. The reason why it took so long is that the school was built by the craftsmen of the Chen family from beginning to end, and no cultivators participated in it. The cultivators of the Chen family basically have their own jobs. There is no manpower to help Chen Biwang build the school. In addition to building the school, Chen Biwang also has to build 108 independent courtyards as accommodation for the first batch of food generation cultivators. The locations of these 108 courtyards are basically built near the spiritual veins and spiritual eyes. This is also to facilitate the cultivation of the food generation cultivators. Such a large amount of work. For the few craftsmen in the Chen family, this was already a huge workload. If it weren't for the fact that everyone had practiced martial arts to some extent and had internal strength, they would not be able to withstand such intense labor. Fortunately, after more than 2 years, the main campus of the school was finally completed. When Chen Daoxuan descended, he saw the words Changping No. 1 Zeuxan Primary School written on the stone in front of him, and his heart was overwhelmed. This will be the first cradle for the rise of the Chen family. In the future, there will be more and more such cradles. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, Chen Daoxuan found Chen Biwang and Chen Daochu surrounded by the crowd. After a while, Chen Daochu seemed to have sensed something and looked at Chen Daoxuan's flying figure. Young patriarch, are you out of retreat? Chen Daochu saw Chen Daoxuan with a look of surprise on his face. More than a year has passed. Chen Daochu has also grown taller, and his cultivation has reached the 7th level of key refining, becoming a cultivator in the late key refining stage. Seeing his rapid progress, Chen Daoxuan nodded and said, not bad. It seems that you haven't been lazy during this period. Chen Daochu scratched his head embarrassedly after being praised by Chen Daoxuan. After saying that, Chen Daoxuan smiled and looked at the white-haired Chen Biwang and said respectfully, Chen Jiangzhou, you have worked hard. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's just a pity that I feel that my time is running out. I'm afraid that after this school is built, I will no longer be able to do my best for the young patriarch and the family. At this point, Chen Biwang's expression dimmed. Don't say that. Chen Daoxuan comforted. You are not doing a small thing. Your contribution to my Chen family is no less than anyone else. If you hadn't built houses, bridges, roads, schools, and various large-scale construction projects for the clan members day and night, my Chen family would not be in the current situation. Although you are not a cultivator, you have laid a solid foundation for the development of my Chen family. At this point, he bowed to Chen Biwang and said, thank you on behalf of the family. Hearing this, Chen Biwang felt his eyes swell up, and he couldn't help but cover his face with his sleeves and cry. Looking at this grey-haired old man, Chen Daoxuan announced in public, from now on, all members of my Chen family, as long as they have made enough contributions to the family, can enter my Chen clan ancestral hall and enjoy the family's offerings forever. Hearing this, Chen Biwang couldn't believe his ears. It has always been the consensus of Wang Xinghe and even the entire Zeuxan world that mortals and cultivators cannot be on the same level. In the eyes of the monks, mortals are just tools for reproduction, just the most useless bottom. Whether it is production or force, mortals have no advantages and can even be said to be a burden. Although the Zhao family has tens of millions of mortals, most of them rely on the Zhao family's monks to protect and even feed them. How can such mortals be respected by the monks? But at this moment, Chen Biwang felt the respect of the high and mighty immortal master here with Chen Daoxuan. This kind of respect is something he has never experienced before. It made him feel a trembling from the depths of his soul. The old man, kowtowed to thank the young patriarch for his grace. As he said this, the white-haired Chen Biwang was about to kneel down, but was pulled back by Chen Daoxuan. General Chen, there is no need to do this. Chen Daoxuan said in a gentle voice. Only Chen Biwang was left there in tears of gratitude. For a long time, Chen Wang, who had calmed down, introduced to Chen Daoxuan, young patriarch, "Look, this area under our feet is all built according to your requirements." Before coming, Chen Daoxuan had already flown around the campus. He had a rough idea of the appearance of this school. At this moment, listening to Chen Wang's introduction, the impression of this school in his heart became more profound. In short, this is a primary school that is very similar to Chen Daoxuan's previous life. Even the class division is very similar to the previous life. There is no way. The Chen family has limited teachers, and it is impossible to do one-on-one teaching. Only large class teaching can be implemented. Fortunately, everyone is a cultivator, and there is no problem of who can't see or hear, or the teacher can't take care of it. And there is another advantage of studying in a large class. It can stimulate the atmosphere of competition among students. Let everyone be more attentive, whether they are practicing or learning various alchemy and refining knowledge. With the support of the Chen family supporting resource supply system, I believe that there will be few food generation cultivators who fish for 3 days and dry the net for 2 days. Of course, if such a lazy monk really appeared, Chen Daoxuan would not be polite to him. He would just give up on him. In the future, there will be more and more monks of the food generation, and there are more than 100 in the first batch alone. Chen Daoxuan can't expect every monk of the food generation to become a talent. This is unrealistic, whether in the previous life or this life. Accompanied by Chen Wang, Chen Daoxuan visited the entire school. Changping No. 1 Zeuxan Primary School took a lot of Chen Wang's efforts, and was also the old man's masterpiece. The only pity is that Chen Wang is immortal and doesn't understand the formation. In this regard, Chen Daoxuan, a master of formations, has to take action. "General Chen, leave the formation to me. You just need to build the student dormitory courtyard." "Yes, young patriarch." Chen Wang bowed and said. Chapter 124 Silk Rain Sword Intent. In the following days, Chen Daoxuan's practice became very regular. In addition to teaching Chen Daochu, Chen Daolian and others about refining equipment and alchemy, he only had to comprehend spells and comprehend spell patterns to improve his sword realm. As time passed, Chen Daoxuan made more and more progress in the wind sword until he reached a point where he could not make any more progress. On a sea not far from Xuanhu Island, Chen Daoxuan sat cross-legged in the air. In front of him, there were 2 flying swords surrounding him. They were Chen Daoxuan's 2 flying swords, Fixu and Chengying. Suddenly, within 100 feet around Chen Daoxuan, a drizzle began to fall. The rain curtain connected to the seawater, making a rustling sound. This was the phenomenon of the sword energy turning into rain in the chasing wind and covering rain sword art. In the rain curtain, white marks shuttled back and forth. This was the killer move in the chasing wind and covering rain sword, transformed by the Chengying sword. Compared with more than a year ago, when Zhao Mubei sword jade slips were not obtained. When Chen Daoxuan used the white mark formed by the Chengying sword again, he felt that both the power and speed had reached a new level. When he killed the female cultivator of Chuan country, if he was at the current level of swordsmanship, he would never have been entangled in the fight for so long. At most 3 swords, he could split the opponent's true essence shield. Feeling the white mark reaching its limit, Chen Daoxuan silently retracted the Fixu Chengying double swords. After integrating the wind pattern, the power of the chasing wind sword technique has been increased to the limit. Now only the water pattern is left. A gleam of light burst out of Chen Daoxuan's eyes. Time passed day by day. In a blink of an eye, 3 months passed. 3 months, a total of 9 opportunities for enlightenment. Let Chen Daoxuan practice 2 first-level water spells to perfection, and the water pattern has also been comprehended to a certain level. It is time to try to integrate it into the sword. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan controlled the 10 stardusts in the sea of consciousness and collided with each other. The next second, his consciousness flew higher and higher, and his understanding of the water swordsmanship became deeper and deeper. After an incense stick, Chen Daoxuan opened his eyes. So that's how it is. No wonder Zhao Mubei said that practicing the sword techniques of Kainyu and sword sect can eventually comprehend the sword intent, but the difficulty of comprehending the sword intent is different. If I specialize in the chasing wind sword technique or the covering rain sword technique, I'm afraid it will be more difficult to comprehend the sword intent. Fortunately, the upper limit of the chasing wind and covering rain sword technique is much higher than that of the single chasing wind sword technique and covering rain sword technique, which reduces the difficulty of my comprehending the sword intent. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxuan grinned and laughed happily. It has been more than 4 years since he obtained the ability to store enlightenment in the Hongmeng Enlightenment Sutra. Chen Daoxuan is now exactly 20 years old. In the past 4 years, he has invested most of his enlightenment opportunities in comprehending the sword. In this way, he can barely comprehend the secret of the sword intent. From this, it can be seen how difficult it is to comprehend the sword intent and become a sword cultivator. This is also the reason why Guangan Sword Immortals Amube is so famous and can be listed on the Purple Mansion Chien Geo list. Chen Daoxuan jumped up and flew towards the port of Xuanhu Island. About 100 miles away from Xuanhu Island, Chen Daoxuan sat cross-legged on the sea again. Fixu Chengying's 2 flying swords came out of the storage bag one after another. Looking at the 2 flying swords, Chen Daoxuan showed a trace of confidence at the corner of his mouth. He knew that he was only a step away from comprehending the sword intent. The so-called half-foot step into the threshold of sword intent was so ridiculous in his eyes at this time. At the beginning, he just practiced the normal sword tactics to the point where there was no more progress. He didn't think of using magic to understand the Tao, let alone integrate the Tao into the sword. At this time, a rain curtain appeared again. Compared with the previous sword energy rain curtain, the rain curtain surrounding Chen Daoxuan at this moment seemed to be more agile. Not only that, the next moment, a white mark appeared in the rain curtain. The white marks kept shuttling back and forth in the rain curtain, and in the end, the sword energy rain curtain suddenly disappeared. Between heaven and earth, there was only a new rain curtain made up of white marks. The sword comes out like a breeze, the breeze is like silk rain, and the silk rain sword meaning, so that's it. Chen Daoxuan showed a smile at the corner of his mouth. Surrounding Chen Daoxuan, there were more and more terrifying white marks, as if they were going to tear everything that entered this world into pieces. The next moment, the white marks suddenly disappeared again, and turned into a sword energy rain curtain. The Tao changed freely, making people overwhelmed. In the past, the white marks transformed by the Chengying sword were the biggest killer move of Chen Daoxuan's Zufeng Fuayu sword. After comprehending the silk rain sword meaning, this biggest killer move turned into an ordinary white mark rain curtain. The power change produced in this was more than 10 times stronger. What's more terrifying is that the sword meaning has the function of tempering the cultivator's true ki, true essence, and magic power. Once Chen Daoxuan's true ki is tempered by the silk rain sword meaning, the quality of the true ki will definitely be able to reach a high level. He didn't know whether it could be comparable to the true essence of a foundation building cultivator, but it was definitely several times more than that of an ordinary ki refining cultivator. Otherwise, Zhao Mubei would not have admired this kind of sword cultivator so much. Comprehending the sword intent and creating the second grade white lotus of good fortune. Chen Daoxuan had already completed 2 of the preparations before building the foundation. The rest was to polish the true ki day by day and polish it to the state of perfect integration. This was a slow process. It didn't even require cultivators to practice in seclusion all day, but to polish the true ki bit by bit in daily life. In fact, after more than a year of polishing the true ki, Chen Daoxuan found that his speed of polishing the true ki was relatively fast. It would only take about a year at most. He should be able to reach the state of perfect integration mentioned in Return to the Origin Gong. However, before that, he had to temper the true ki in his danshan with the silk rain sword intent. He worked so hard to comprehend the sword intent in the ki refining period, wasn't it just for this opportunity to temper the true ki? Chen Daoxuan would never miss this opportunity. He returned to the courtyard of the Lingfu. The courtyard that was almost destroyed during the last experiment has been restored to its original appearance. Chen Daoxuan even made some small changes according to his preferences. For example, the area of the Lington was expanded by 3 points. Of course, if the area of the Lington is expanded, there must be enough spiritual energy Fortunately, there are not many cultivators in the Chen family now, and the spiritual energy consumed by the spiritual veins is not much every day. The Lington can accumulate enough spiritual liquid. When the food generation cultivators start to practice, it may not be the case. It seems that we have to continue to upgrade the spiritual veins. Chen Daoxuan muttered silently. In fact, neither he nor Chen Ziyan thought that the Chen family would develop so rapidly. In just a few years, the first level spiritual veins are not enough. The reason for this is that Chen Daoxuan's family fertility policy is too abnormal. In addition to working all day, the male clan members are busy making babies, so that the family population has skyrocketed in recent years. This far exceeded the requirement that Chen Daoxuan had set for the magistrate of Changping County, Chen Zhi, to increase the population tenfold. In the courtyard, Chen Daoxuan put aside all distractions and used the silk rain sword intent that he had comprehended wholeheartedly to refine the true key in his dinshin. The sword intent was ethereal, colorless, and invisible. But it really existed. This was what Zhao Mubei recorded in the sword jade slip. At this moment, Chen Daoxuan finally understood the meaning of this sentence. He only felt that his true key was transforming little by little under an inexplicable force. The speed of this transformation was slow but stable. After 3 days of retreat, Chen Daoxuan finally tempered all the true key in his danshin into a new sword key. He called this new true key that. After a simple trial, he found that the quality of this new true key was at least 3 times higher than that of ordinary true key. Although it was not yet at the point where the true essence of a foundation building cultivator was more than 10 times stronger than that of a key refining cultivator, there was already a fundamental gap compared to ordinary key refining cultivators. Moreover, compared with the foundation building cultivators, his true key is no longer so vulnerable. At least now, if he were to fight against the female cultivator from Chuan country, Chen Daoxuan could kill her with one sword under the circumstances at that time. Chapter 125 Purchase Foundation Building Pill. Time flies. A year passed quickly. Because he comprehended the silk rain sword intent, he crossed the iconic threshold of the sword path. The obstacles on Chen Daoxuan's sword path also disappeared. In the past year, Chen Daoxuan spent all his time to comprehend the sword path, besides honing his true key and teaching several Dao generation monks. Moreover, as Chen Daoxuan's sword path realm became more and more profound, he found that his sword path realm had actually improved a little bit with his comprehension even in the non-epiphany state. It seemed that as he comprehended the sword intent, his sword path talent was also strengthened to some extent. This discovery undoubtedly made Chen Daoxuan very happy. Although Chen Daoxuan's sword path progressed rapidly, he knew that he did not rely on his sword path talent to reach today's level. Although Chen Daoxuan's sword path talent was not bad, he could barely be called a genius in the Kainyuan sword sect. But compared with Zhao Mubei, a monster who could comprehend the sword intent in the foundation building period, his sword path talent was still more than one level weaker. It's just, Chen Daoxuan couldn't compete with him in terms of his talent in swordsmanship, but he had a cheat. With the blessing of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Sutra restoring his enlightenment ability, all difficulties were solved. It was as easy as drinking water to comprehend the swordsmanship. Silky rain sword intent, including the chasing wind and covering rain sword art that Chen Daoxuan had used before, emphasizes the word scatter. Sword key turns into rain, and white marks are used as curtains. It is the scatter in swordsmanship that is reflected. This kind of sword intent is most suitable for one against many, and is good at group attacks. But at the same time, Silky Rain sword intent inevitably has shortcomings compared to other sword intents. That is, the explosive power is insufficient. Of course, it does not mean that Chen Daoxuan lacks explosive power, but that he lacks explosive power compared to sword cultivators of the same level. Therefore, Chen Daoxuan calls the next direction of Silky Rain sword intense practice combination. The so-called combination is to merge the white mark rain curtains into one. It is very difficult to achieve this. At least Chen Daoxuan has to comprehend the Silky Rain sword intent more deeply before he can be sure to do it. Chen Daoxuan practiced for a year. After countless sudden realizations, he was only able to reduce the white rain curtain of 100 feet to a dozen feet. Then, he seemed to have encountered a new bottleneck. No matter how he realized it, his swordsmanship level would not improve. But Chen Daoxuan knew that this time he was not encountering a bottleneck in swordsmanship, but a bottleneck in cultivation. In short, his cultivation was too low, and was no longer enough to support him to comprehend a more advanced swordsmanship realm. This phenomenon of cultivation delaying realm is probably unique in the entire cultivation world. In fact, let alone cultivation delaying the swordsmanship realm, even if there is a sword cultivator who can comprehend the sword intent in the key refining stage like him, it is estimated that there is no sword cultivator in the entire Wangxing Sea. Otherwise, Chen Daoxuan should at least have heard of it. And he had never heard of the existence of such a sword cultivator, whether from the 3 lists given by Kainyuan sword sect, or from rumors in the outside world. The reason is very simple. Even if there is a cultivator with such a perverted swordsmanship talent who can comprehend the sword intent in the key refining stage, he probably wouldn't dare to do so. Because doing so is almost the same as seeking death. This kind of cultivator is invincible in the sword key stage, and can even cross the realm to kill the foundation establishment cultivator. Once the foundation is established, death will be waiting for him. Chen Daoxuan, who has read Zhao Mubei's sword Jade Slip, knows this clearly. Let's not talk about anything else. He is in this state now. Whenever he thinks about building a foundation, a strong panic will always surge in his heart. The panic and whim of the cultivator will not appear for no reason. Whenever a cultivator has this feeling, he must pay attention to whether there is any danger waiting for him. Of course, Chen Daoxuan has made sufficient preparations for building a foundation. If even he cannot successfully build a foundation with such sufficient preparations, it means that comprehending the sword intent in the key refining stage is a dead end. However, in order to ensure that there is no risk, Chen Daoxuan still plans to go to Guang'an Prefecture to buy another foundation pill. Chuanghu Island. In the courtyard of Chen Daoxuan's spiritual palace. You mean, you want to buy the foundation building pill? Chen Ziyan took 2 steps at a time, walked forward, and firmly grasped Chen Daoxuan's shoulders, and said excitedly, in just over 2 years, you have actually polished your true key to a harmonious state. It's so fast, so fast. Chen Ziyan's eyes flickered with tears, and then smiled. If you had taken the Tongmei pill at the beginning, and had the current cultivation environment, maybe your foundation building age would really break the record set by Zhao Mu. Looking at Chen Daoxuan, who was already 21 years old, Chen Ziyan couldn't help but sigh. Whether it's 20 years old or 21 years old, it doesn't make any difference to me. Chen Daoxuan smiled and said, it's meaningless to fight for this. Yes, it's meaningless to fight for this. Ha ha ha. Chen Ziyan laughed loudly. This was probably the happiest time he laughed since the family cultivated the spiritual veins. The Chen family will finally have its first foundation building cultivator. With the first, the second, and the third will not be far away. Chen Ziyan thought of Chen Daoxuan and Chen Daolian. Like Chen Daoxuan, they were both upper spiritual root cultivators, and had already reached the 8th level of key refining, only 1 step away from the 9th level. Compared with Chen Daoxuan back then, Chen Daoxuan and Chen Daolian seemed to have enjoyed the best cultivation conditions at the beginning of their cultivation. All kinds of resources were continuously available. It was estimated that even Zhao Mubei could not be as extravagant as them during the key refining period. Although the Zhao family was wealthy, there were many cultivators in the family, as many as hundreds of thousands. Therefore, the Zhao family could not have given Zhao Mubei so many resources during the key refining period, even if Zhao Mubei was a cultivator of the heavenly spiritual root. Zhao Mubei's real rise was not due to his heavenly spiritual root, but to his understanding of the sword intent during the foundation establishment period, and becoming a sword cultivator. This made the Zhao family put all their bets on him, and various resources continued to tilt. As a result, Zhao Mubei became a purple mansion cultivator before he was 100 years old. You know, it is much more difficult to advance in the foundation establishment period than in the key refining period. There is no such thing as advancing several levels of cultivation in a year. In fact, in the foundation building stage, if a cultivator can achieve an average of 1 level of cultivation within 10 years, it is considered a good speed. The road of cultivation is inherently more difficult as you go to the later stages. Otherwise, there would not be cultivators who have a lifespan of hundreds or thousands of years, but not enough time to practice and break through. 3 years later, Chen Daoxuan and Chen Zian once again embarked on a journey to Guanghan Prefecture. The journey was smooth. A month later, Chen Daoxuan and Chen Zian walked into the Hongyan Flying Sword shop in the Sangxiu market. Daoxuan, you said that you won't go to Zhao's auction house to buy the foundation building pill this time. Chen Zian seemed quite surprised when he heard Chen Daoxuan's words. Yes, I want to find an acquaintance to buy it. Chen Daoxuan smiled. Acquaintance? Chen Zian's face was full of doubts. In Guanghan Prefecture, the most powerful person the Chen family knew was Zhao Mucheng. Chen Zian guessed. Could it be that Daoxuan wanted to find Zhao Mucheng to buy it at the Zhao family's internal price? But, isn't this forcing Zhao Mucheng to make a mistake? The Zhao family has strict rules. If one of their own uses the foundation building pill, they can buy it at an internal price, but they are not allowed to wrestle the foundation building pill and dig into the family. Otherwise, if they are caught, the Zhao family law enforcement team will not let them off easily. Thinking of this, Chen Zian hesitated. Daoxuan, my Chen family doesn't lack these 10,000 or 20,000 spirit stones now. Why should we make things difficult for brother Zhao? Seeing that Uncle 13 had gone astray, Chen Daoxuan smiled and said, don't worry, Uncle 13, the person I'm looking for is not Uncle Zhao. Findi est capitulo muchas gracias por lega hasta el final no se olviden de del lake buscas más contenido exclusivo y acceso inmediato, suscria bet en nuestro Patreon. Recuda, cada like, suscripción o donación nos americana. Gracias a todos nos vemos en el próximo video.